She lies face down on the cave floor. Her breath is ragged, and the weight of the struggle presses down on her mercilessly. The beast recoils, and dark ichor splatters from its face as the final blow finds its target. The beast falls, and in the stone remains an ordinary, mundane dagger, plunged into the very depths. Its magical aura dissolves into the void. She stands among the debris, cutting disappointment away from the prey, while her companions quarrel over meager trophies and the difficult path ahead. They retreat into the shadow of the tunnel, their voices echoing complaints about the futility of this ascent. Hours drag on in the suffocating silence of the abyss, and the cave floor remains untouched. But suddenly the earth trembles, and beneath the surface, a new, threatening presence begins to stir. In the depths of the dungeon, a viscous substance bursts from the wall and floor like a fountain, heralding the emergence of a labyrinthine creature, one born not of nature. When the mass coalesces into one, it becomes clear. These creatures do not grow or learn. They simply appear without memory or past experience, replacing those who have fallen. Although it mimics the form of a living being, it has no true life. It exists only as an empty creation of the dungeon's design. The Minotaur stands amid the shifting floor, as if proof that these monsters do not evolve or inherit traits from their predecessors. Its eyes snap open sharply, revealing a cold, predatory intelligence, entirely artificial. In the boss room, Sazard and Labyrinth, another creature successfully emerged. Now it came for its place. It rises to its full, enormous height, gripping heavy axes with a strength born of pure, mindless instinct. The beast surveys its territory, restraining a heavy, primal breath quiet until it prepares to defend the level. A viscous puddle swelled and expelled it outward. A gigantic form tore through the watery barrier until it fully manifested in the labyrinth. The beast towered two high, heavy axes spread to the sides as it let out a guttural, primal roar that rolled through the stone corridors. Its jaw hung loosely, revealing rows of torn, human teeth just as it was about to scare. With a sharp, fiercely violent motion, it slammed the weapon into the ground. The stone floor cracked and shattered, and fragments scattered in all directions. The beast stood among the ruins it had made itself, a silent guardian watching over the central prayer. Her eyes narrowed, and cold light flashed for a moment just as she aimed at a distant movement. From the shadows, the monster keenly watched the solitary figure approaching the entrance. Its gaze did not blink and was deadly. The priestess stepped forward, the blade already in hand, but she did not know that the dark, swirling abyss had already marked her arrival. She froze in place. Her eyes widened as she realized who loomed before her, the cursed level 10 boss, Minotaur. The holographic interface flickered and reappeared, displaying her documents. Elena, level 16, Class D. She clenched herself, holding back against the shadow of the beast advancing. The weight of the monster's presence pressed on her. Its gigantic figure and coarse, palpable rage forced her to face the terrible reality of this encounter. Clinging to self-control with her thoughts, she tried to tame her heart. It was wildly pounding in her chest. She once again replayed the careful preparation in her mind and tightly gripped the restorative medicine she had brought precisely for this moment. The Minotaur loomed. His gaze pinned her in place while she calculated. To defeat this guard alone, and she would be promoted to Class C. Her grip on the weapon tightened even more from desperate hope that this victory would restore her father's strength and make her mother smile again. She tightly clutched the talisman and whispered a fervent prayer to the earth goddess for protection, even as the monster shattered the silence with a deafening primal roar. With a sharp, brutal jerk, the Minotaur leapt into the air and struck down with a heavy axe blow, landed right on the ground beneath her feet, splitting the earth apart. She barely makes it. The ground beneath her feet cracks and crumbles into sharp fragments as the beast's axe bites into the stone. With a desperate scream, she lunges back, not taking her eyes off the giant figure as he raises his hand for the next devastating blow. He lunges forward, the axe cuts through the air, but she stays literally a step out of reach, forcing the monster to strike the cave wall. From the impact, fragments fly in all directions, but she does not blink or look away. She sees that the predicted movements of this bruiser reveal his weakest spot. Recalling her training, she calculates the rhythm of his attack and concludes, neutralizing him is the only way to victory before unleashing a fierce fight that rumbles over everything around. She hits precisely, cuts the monster's grip on its weapon. A surge of triumph washes over her as the axes clang and fall to the ground. The beast shudders from shock, but she does not retreat, seizes the moment, and delivers the final, decisive blow, which lashes him back. Exhaustion finally takes its toll and she falls to the cave floor, gasping for air, while the defeated giant looms in the shadow from afar. She watches in horror as the monster lets out a deafening, primal roar. Its gigantic body wildly lunges forward, filled with new, terrible energy. The memory of the warning echoes in her thoughts. The monster rises again for a furious attack, a devastating maneuver that burns all strength and leaves its victim immobilized. She frantically checks the supplies. Realizing that now a single mistake could be fatal, she keeps hit potions with healing elixirs ready for the upcoming onslaught. The monster releases a shockwave of pure power. The ground trembles wildly, and the force of its breath tears through the chamber. In despair, she raises a flickering barrier of light, her body twitching under colossal pressure as she tries to maintain the defense. The monster lunges forward with unmatched momentum. The mass of the axe cuts through the air to strike the ground where it was just a moment ago. Barely dodging the blow, she suddenly realizes this. The boss is locked within these walls, so only a timely retreat can save her in this clash. She gasps sharply for air, her lungs burning when the creature looms over her and forces her to convulsively recoil backward to escape its relentless, suffocating pursuit. The priestess rushes across the cold floor. Her breath falters as a huge beast looms over her. Heavy footsteps dull the echo with each cautious approach. He, as if unleashing primal rage, strikes the stone walls with his fists. The blow cracks magical runes, and they flare up, exploding with unstable energy until the creature stops its relentless assault. With a thunderous strike, the Minotaur crushes the surrounding masonry. Debris flies into the air, and he stomps forward to corner his prey. The beast freezes for a moment, then gasps for air. Nostrils flare, sharp, heavy breaths burst from its chest. Its gaze fixes on the fallen woman. She cannot immediately rise from the ground. Her body trembles from incredible exhaustion after this encounter. The creature's face twists into a fierce, rabid roar. Fangs protrude as it prepares to deliver the final devastating blow. In a desperate attempt to survive, she reaches to grab the bag nearby, pulls it toward herself, and retreats into the dark corridor. She sinks against the wall, sobbing from pain and defeat, clutching the bag tightly, and the weight of her situation finally crashes down with full force. She settled on the cold stone, and her spirit tore at the brink in her chest as she begged the earth goddess for one last surge of strength to overcome the fear that came wave after wave. The chamber walls trembled, pulsing with sharp, crackling energy in response to her desperate prayer, while the heavy blows of the pursuer approached dully and relentlessly. With a thunderous roar, the monster lunged forward. Its massive body oozed the same unstable, hissing energy that now devoured the surrounding architecture. She froze in horror as the creature tore through the runic defenses, and with a stone in her heart realized, the guardian of the bathhouse had broken the boundary. The Minotaur closed the distance, moving heavily and breathing wearily, filling the cramped space as it prepared to strike with devastating force. In a blurred whirlwind of movements, the monster grabbed her and tossed her upward. A helpless figure hung in the air as she looked straight into the abyss of his gaping, growling maw. The blow was complete. The disgusting collision shattered her and threw her onto the merciless floor. When the dust settled, the air still hissed from residual force, and only the silence of the final, devastating defeat lay above. She lies broken on the ground, and her body still radiates a faint, fading warmth as life force drains from her. The air around her begins to hiss and steam. Remnants of her divine energy wildly react to the trauma. With a heavy, dull blow, the beast presses his huge hand stone-like, like a statue against her, and extinguishes the last sparks of resistance. The pressure increases, and a disgusting sound echoes, as if the earth and bones are cutting through the silence of the entire chamber. With a single drop of moisture, the creature's grip slips, and after it falls the last, devastating weight of his palm. Beneath them, the earth compresses and tears, creaking with cracks from colossal force, unable to withstand the creature's relentless pressure. Choking on the height to the very top, the monster jerks up to full titanic stature and lets out a deafening roar, shaking the rotten ruins to their foundations. An insatiable, oceanic thirst burns in her chest. It is not anger that drives the beast, it is primal, unquenchable hunger. The beast's roar cuts through the void, a guttural demand, more power and more opponents to slaughter. She growls about her greed for power, a desperate plea that tears the silence of the ruins. Among the ruins lies a fallen altar broken, and its lifeblood slowly drips onto the cold, merciless stone. A mystical seal flashes on the ground. It responds to a call with an ancient, icy promise: desires will be heard and fulfilled. A blinding burst of energy spills outward, enveloping the creature in the glow of a divine aura and making the very air tremble. Light begins to devour space, dissolving the remnants of battle into emptiness as if they never existed at all. Flesh and stone alike are burned by the force of manifestation. They bend under the weight of divine intervention. The sacred relic pulses with a rhythmic rumble, and this light, which should be a blessing only for the righteous, is now twisted by the hunger of a beast. He felt divine grace surge within him. It healed physical wounds and lifted the burden of past clashes, forging the body with a power far greater. The transformation continued under a rhythmic humming. The solemn growth shook the very foundations of the chamber, while the ground beneath his feet trembled. His form expanded, muscles convulsed spasmodically, hardened by stolen strength, and cast a heavy, oppressive shadow on the stone walls. He twitched and exhaled sharply, fingers tensely curled, testing the newly acquired grip density, mixed with primal, hungry power. The greed that devoured his thoughts burst out in a desperate, muffled demand. More power, more might, and more clashes. Somewhere in the distance, the call to battle echoed so loudly that he heard it and accepted the challenge. Armored warriors and mages were already standing ready. The old scholar, swaying in the trembling light of a candle, lifted his gaze from ancient texts and his eyes narrowed. He sensed the arrival of new enemies. Obsession thickened, his gaze fixed on a single goal: to crush even stronger enemies, and determination, hardening, turned into one bloody, merciless aim. He looks ahead with stoic concentration. Sharp features are coldly caught by a glint as he examines the anomaly before him. Deep on the 10th floor of the Sazern labyrinth, a legend begins to take root. A beast standing in the shadows challenges the natural order, proving that beasts can evolve and grow beyond their basic instincts. She responds with a gaze primal, unwavering. Her power is so unpredictable and mighty that she earns a title whispered with fear: the King of the Labyrinth. Labyrinths are ancient underground mysteries that have captivated human imagination for years. These mysterious spaces are scattered across the world and serve as foundations of glory and prosperity for modern civilization. As one traveler once said, these are the abodes of gods, granting boundless riches, fame, and explosive power to anyone daring enough to enter. In their depths, it is whispered that any desire can be fulfilled. One only needs the strength to take it from others. The silence of stone corridors is shattered by a roar. A beast-haired giant drives his weapon into the ground with all his might, and the earth trembles from the impact. He breathes heavily, his eyes burning with a hunger for battle, insatiable and demanding. Enemies are not enough. He needs more to test his strength. While humanity carelessly suspects nothing, a catastrophe unfolds in the depths of the 10th level of Sazerd and Labyrinth, the very one he himself provoked. The beast stands amid the ruins, a creature of pure, uncontrollable rage, born from the very bowels of the earth. He tears the flesh of his fallen prey with primal fury, and the clinking of torn muscles echoes down the stone corridor. After he consumes the remains, he watches as the essence of the creature dissolves into radiant orbs, leaving behind only a metallic object that clinks against the floor. Comprehension comes quietly and inevitably. Those who die within these walls vanish completely, no trace, only their earthly belongings. He breathes heavily, and his anger grows each time it dawns on him. The pitiful trophies from his victory cannot quell that insatiable hunger. And suddenly, from the darkness, emerges a pack of wild beasts. Their growls challenge his dominion in the labyrinth. They burst into attack in a coordinated onslaught, but he meets their fury with a barrage of precise, deadly strikes. While one creature tries to flank him, he sharply turns with incredible speed and catches its jaws midair. He crushed the life out of his attacker to the last breath. The crunch of bones sounds, putting an end to the clash as he stands amid the wreckage. He strode through the pack of beasts with primal rage. A giant hand swept away resistance again and again, and the creatures collapsed lifelessly onto the stone floor. With fierce determination, he gnawed the remains and swallowed them. Hunger receded barely, while the fallen enemies dissolved into shimmering coins and metal fragments. Breaking free from the slaughter, he ran into a new wave of predators, hissing and growling. Growls rolled down the narrow corridor as he prepared for another brutal clash. The beast delved deeper into the labyrinth, its heavy steps cutting a path of destruction, and its eyes burned with an ever-growing, restless rage. He swung the axe with desperate strength, cursing the endless pack of weaklings, and in his mind burned a single, insatiable desire: greater power. Meanwhile, the lone warrior cornered himself, his back pressed against the cold wall, and the blade disobeyed as he watched the pack of monsters creeping ever closer. He breathed heavily, his chest torn by fatigue, and the predatory creatures circled around, waiting only for the moment his weakness wavered. The Minotaur emerged from the shadows, and his gaze caught the warrior. For the first time at that moment he felt another prey had appeared. He stands amid the furious blizzard of lupin beasts, and his blade rhythmically, precisely cuts through fur and flesh. Each strike is a calculated response to the mad pack, so he, holding his position, does not let the relentless onslaught push him back, leaving behind a blood-black trail of dark ichor. The warrior lunged forward and drove steel deep into the creature's skull, but at that very moment, another monster grabbed his arm. He jerked back, gasped, and struggled to catch his breath, while the rest of the predators circled around in the dark corridor. He rushed toward the final beast, the blade already set for a fatal strike, but suddenly froze. From the shadows came a primal, unbearable pressure he must stop, for he finally understands. In this hunt, he is no longer the apex predator. The warrior drives the blade deep into the creature, and the impact echoes through the corridor as he pins the beast to the ground. He quickly drags out a vial, swallows the red liquid to patch his wounds, and notices. These potions are not for emergencies, they are for survival in the very depths of the labyrinth. From the darkness suddenly looms a heavy, sudden presence. He freezes in fear as he realizes he is no longer alone. His eyes widen in disbelief. In the corridor, where seemingly nothing like this could be, before him stands a minotaur, a boss-level monster. His body trembles and his thoughts race. He instantly understands. This opponent is much stronger, and he cannot defeat him. The two freeze in a tense standoff, seemingly not even breathing. The warrior cautiously shifts his weight while the beast prepares to strike. He slowly retreats, not taking his eyes off the monster, making his way through the narrow stone corridor. The beast watches him intently, its gaze fixed on the warrior who twists toward the stairs to escape the deadly clash. He retreats into the depths of the labyrinth, his body heavy from wounds and exhaustion, while the minotaur prowls the corridors behind, delivering heavy, rhythmic blows. Days pass after that encounter, granting the region a quiet respite. Life once again thrives in the suburbs of Sazerden Labyrinth, especially in the village of Mycenae, where travelers gather under the sun. The local adventurers guild is the heart of this business. Both travelers and locals converge here. Inside the guild hall, the air thickens with the bustle of visitors. They exchange stories and drink. In the midst of the festivities, a muscular adventurer approaches the quest board, and the more he reads, the more his irritation grows. There are simply no difficult assignments here. Soon the guild president approaches him, recognizing his arrival, and immediately, without unnecessary words, throws a specific urgent task. The president explains how serious everything is. Reports have appeared that the minotaur was seen. He wanders the corridors of the 10th floor, far beyond his assigned boss's room. He listened silently while the details of the incident were laid out. The equipment was torn, and a metal item belonging to the traveler Elena was found right in front of the boss's room. The briefing continued. Rumors were mentioned about a strange creature hunting on the 10th floor, and somewhere there the gray wolf monsters left their usual drops of items. Haja furrowed his brows and stated, "For the gray wolves to refuse prey is extremely irregular, as they are known to be relentless opponents." The guild president leaned forward and made it clear. For a scout of such a level, checking the presence of the minotaur and investigating strange deviations is a trifle. He acknowledged the meager monetary reward, but the president immediately countered, offering something much more valuable, a personal favor from the guild leader himself. The surrounding travelers gasped in shock upon hearing the offer, but Paya grinned, realizing that the president owed him, which is more valuable than gold, only restrained himself from choosing. When the deal was sealed, the group gathered to set off. Determination was hardened by the weight of the mission that awaited ahead. Among them stands Charlie, ready for adventures. Her status as level 28 C-class adventurer confirmed, so she sets off into the very depths. She watched as a traveler named Raystrand, a warrior of class C level 29, finally entered the data for registration. The guild leader addressed the entire group, confirming, the reward for their mission belongs to them and remains in their hands provided that they keep the report themselves. As the conversation shifted to promotions and merits, the mage Charlia interjected, ostentatiously boasting of her own greatness and dismissing all doubts about whether her help would even be needed. Her face darkened. A sharp, eerie smile appeared on her lips as she pressed Paja with evidence there are no hidden motives in the agreement between them. For a moment attention wavered, and the group was already gathering to leave. Their decision had long been set a step ahead. He brushed off the discomfort, as if a sharp temper was something one simply gets used to over time. She again steered the conversation toward the mission, and asked the guild president about the proper protocol if something truly anomalous suddenly happened in the laboratory. Her gaze sharpened as she made a chilling suggestion. What if the minotaur is found and wandering outside the boss's designated room? In the room she watches as the guild president considers her hypothetical scenario. Professional detachment disappears for a moment, replaced by attentive, measured silence. He acknowledges the weight of her words and offers to increase the payment if this incredible disaster actually occurs, effectively shifting the burden of that possible reality onto her shoulders. After the terms of their dangerous contracts were settled, the adventurers set out to hunt. First, they gathered a squad for the chase to track the beast, thereby only clearing the way for a brutal, inevitable confrontation deep in the labyrinth. Deep within the Sazern labyrinth, the squad reaches the boss on the 10th floor. Ray Strand, Charlia, and Paja stand ready. Their presence hints that this is the final stage of his descent. But suddenly they come face to face with a gigantic minotaur. Its presence is oppressive and seems strange. The adventurers exchange glances, measuring the unusual size and striking differences. The beast responds with eerie confidence, and the group cannot understand why it is not afraid despite their combined strength. Raystrand shifts focus to possible rewards. He suggests they are dealing with a unique monster, which greatly increases the chance that rare items will indeed drop. Seeing how the loot strengthens their resolve, the company stops arguing and moves on to the hunt synchronously. In one voice, they rush forward. They instantly put the plan together. Raystrand and the warrior will distract the beast, and Padra will keep her aim on her precious arrows. As soon as the creature is poisoned, she will strike. But despite the plan, a barely perceptible horror creeps into the party by evening. The Minotaur feels different than it should. Instead of the usual mood, it radiates a creepy aura that sharply contradicts their expectations. Heya begins to channel magic, and his face suddenly twists in shock. The spell does not manifest as it should, leaving him exposed. He quickly recovers from the failure. He wins on a luminous sigil and pulls a weapon from an invisible stash. Nearby, she whispers a spell, calling the goddess so that she may bind the beast with thorns made of clay. The warrior strikes with all his might, but the blade does not pierce the Minotaur's skin, and he freezes in shock, feeling the unnatural endurance of the creature. She retaliates with a hail of ice knives. Their sharp blades whistle through the air, closing a ring around the monster. Watching the chaos, he suddenly realizes the Minotaur is not only strong, it harbors a terrible power that shatters their hopes. They coordinate the next move, releasing Alcaraz arrows, poison projectiles, blessed by the temple, straight into the beast's blind spot. The Minotaur reacts with impossible speed. It swings and deflects the projectiles aside a moment more, and they would have missed the target. He watches with disbelief as the creature snorts contemptuously. It is clear that it perfectly understands their tactics and mocks the failed attempt. He had seen the beast rush forward with terrifying speed, its huge axe cutting through the air. The creature's eyes were fixed on the banquet, burning with a predatory intent. This was not yet a victory, nor was it a defeat. During the clash, Charlie persuaded Raystrenda to drop the sarcasm and switch to a new tactica, three-pronged attack, to neutralize the monster's weapon. Her determination hardened when she called upon her father's legacy and decided to prove she was capable of it. They moved in unison, closing around the Minotaur, and a terrifying tension grew in the air between them. Memories overwhelmed her again. Her father, Gil Lynx, handed her his sacred wand. He demanded that she prove worthy of holding his legacy, and this trial fueled every step she took in the deadly dance. She pulled herself together, shouted a vow to earn his approval and show the true scale of her talent. With sobbing, she snatched the icy spelled ground, instantly became thin ice, while others meanwhile launched coordinated strikes at the beast. The air exploded with muffled blows as they pressed the attack, but the anger only grew. Every strike met a perfect, impenetrable defense. Despite the magical bonds and wounds bleeding all over his hide, the Minotaur remained relentless. He defended his vital spots with instinctive precision, so the joint efforts yielded nothing. The beast froze motionless, yet the adventurers still choked under the heavy pressure of mental fatigue, understanding one thing: their meager supply of healing intoxicants only delays exhaustion, and not for long. She stood in place and trembled with her voice, uttering a spell to summon the mighty light that devours everything. The air flared up as soon as she continued her rhythmic singing, weaving the anger of red bronze and the sorrow of gray-blue into a swirling vortex of flame. He roared for her to stop, warning, such long, complex spells leave her completely defenseless against the reach of the monster. She ignored the warning, and her eyes blazed with such firmness that for her, the future master of magic, it was simply impossible not to overcome this worthless enemy. For a moment of hesitation, and the spell was broken. The creature lunged into attack. Its gigantic figure rushed with such furious speed that defense immediately became pointless. The blow landed with a deadly crunch, and her allies panicked with screams as the battlefield was suddenly marked by a bloody, brutal turn of events. A piercing screech cuts the air as the blade descends, striking with fatal precision. A sudden frenzy tears a scream of horror from a comrade, and blood splashes dirty onto the ground. He stands amid the carnage, his gigantic blade trembling from the strain of the fight, and she screams his name in frenzy. Remembering his father's instruction that mages must remain calm, he forces himself to take a deep breath face covered in blood, but his determination only grows stronger. She presses against him, and her voice barely whispers as she apologizes for the terrible situation they found themselves in. Their ally watches in panic as the monster unleashes a deafening roar. Its power surges like a wave as the creature prepares to unleash devastating fury. When the beast's aura flares up, he orders them to drink the yellow elixir understanding. This is their only chance to stop the onslaught of madness. They storm forward to gulp down this mixture. Movements are feverish. As soon as the clear realization comes, this is the last desperate maneuver, the last chance to survive this mad attack. While the potion courses through them, they tense in readiness to strike, not taking their eyes off the beast flying at them, and that is when the final clash begins. He freezes in disbelief when the beast ignores all known boundaries. His frenzy, which does not subside, destroys confidence as if such power can break out only once. With a disgusting crunch, the creature sliced through the air, and with every moment its movements became even more chaotic and deadly. The realization overwhelmed them with the weight of a falling mountain. The demonic beast was leveling up not just for nothing it was learning, and it was a horror that erased all their previous knowledge. After this evolution, the danger soared many times over, because the creature demonstrated the ability to grow in a way that should have been impossible for any inhabitant of the labyrinth. The beast struck with brutal efficiency. With its giant axe, it leapt into the air and delivered a devastating blow. He called out to his ally to retreat, his voice strained through the tension as he prepared to face the onslaught. Nearby, a faint magical glow barely flickered. In despair, she shouted his name, warning. The beast's howl has inevitable consequences, and he turned to her with a grim, unwavering face, resolutely deciding to intervene. He tightened his grip on the weapon, and his voice did not betray a steady tone. He cast off the burden of his father's orders and chose to fight by his own will. He stood his ground, staring at the beast, and was not going to yield while calculating the trajectory of the flying axe. A surge of adrenaline, he deflected the blow, and metal clanged as the heavy weapon was successfully parried. But the victory lasted only briefly. After the second strike, the beast weakened and fainted, and with this blow, unexpectedly for him, was brutally and finally stunned. The realization struck everyone at once. This was not an ordinary monster, but an anomaly with terrible cunning. When the monster loomed, he pushed his companion to flee and survive at any cost. A cruel splash of blood stained the place of impact, as the monster's attack continued relentlessly with devastating, overwhelming force. Nearby, the remnants of the broken magical barrier cracked and clanged. The light faded, the protection had completely failed. Memories of the promise to protect her flooded his consciousness, and primal terror turned into a desperate, hoarse cry of defiance. She released her inner strength, whispering a spell to summon the flames of retribution, and was already ready to unleash a devastating magical attack. She screams in defiance, her voice trembling with rage as she swears to burn the monster for the cruelty to her fallen comrade. Her gaze is fixed firmly on the target, and she softly hums the binding flame spell, a promise to reduce the monster to ashes. With a final, desperate surge of magical energy, she releases a stream of fire. It explodes and swiftly flies straight at the Minotaur. The ground shakes wildly from the sheer force of the magical discharge. Lifted by the explosion, the beast lets out a furious roar of agony as the flames consume its body. Far from the battlefield, Guild President Logan watches the sunset from his office, his mind clouded with heavy anxiety over the late party. He grants the guest a quiet moment, acknowledging the life of a guild leader is never without burdens. He sits in thought, and his wrinkled face reveals deep worry as he calls himself Gil Lynx, then plunges into reflections on the nature of the beast. Its abnormal power, like a lure, draws even the mightiest mages in the world toward the abyss of potential destruction. The guild's bustling hall still hums with adrenaline. It is full of adventurers, and no one suspects how tension is mounting behind closed doors. In the president's office, a cup of tea remains untouched as he acknowledges the grim news. The investigation team has vanished without a trace. He sits opposite an experienced warrior, and the weight of the situation settles heavily in the silence of the Mycan Guild room. The guild leader runs his fingers through his beard, frowning as he once again replays the memory of the Minotaur in his mind. His status flashes briefly. Gil extends a connection to a top S-class adventurer just as he prepares to intervene. He rejects the warrior's offer to help, insisting that this matter suits a master of magic, and with a sudden crackle of energy, he casts a teleportation spell. The warrior watches him leave, and with a cheerful smile notes to the shelf, "The president is still as carefree and impulsive as ever." In a flash of light, he disappears from the room, leaving the warrior alone to process the sudden departure. He carefully removed his hood and, restrained and somber, turned to his companion, seeking an answer. What had happened? On the table, restored items clinked a grim pile of metal and broken equipment, silently telling the story of defeat. The man surveyed the remains, and with a heavy heart understood. There was no place for the Minotaur in the boss's room on the 10th floor, so searching was pointless. It was unbearable for him to comprehend the consequences. How could 3 such travelers have died at the hands of an enemy they should have defeated, being well equipped? Realizing the full weight of this secret, he decided to act cautiously. The main thing was not to betray himself, and he announced that he would go to the royal palace. Shortly after, he sat alone in his office. Silence pressed the space against his chest as he replayed the grim turn of events in his mind. His thoughts raced through possibilities. Would the beast abandon its post, or could the adventurers manage to force a deadly stalemate? Somewhere deep in the labyrinth echoed a heavy, springy thudding. It bounced off the stone floor, as if warning of a presence that shatters all expectations. He stands amid cold stone, a gigantic body tense with strain, heavy axes in his hands, and eyes burning with hunger for a worthy challenge. In the deepest, primal layer of consciousness, he pushes the way forward and thinks, will the rogue depths of the labyrinth finally bring out enemies capable of testing his true strength? The beast roars through the corridors. Heavy steps thud dully against the walls, while he calls the darkness with a roar and chases only the sharp sensations of the hunt. The next morning, the guild president receives a report that starts shaking him. His eyes widen, and distrust immediately shows on his face as soon as the 9th floor is mentioned. He listens silently as details unfold. A company of newcomers who ran into the boss of the 10th floor Minotaur far beyond his assigned domain. Although this story sounds like feverish delirium, the steadfastness of the eyewitness testimony leaves no doubt. He tells the absolute truth about how indifferent the beast is to them. Lost in thought, the president sighs heavily. His hand rests on his chin, then an order, brief and immediate: send an alarm to all travelers. He replays the impossible event over and over in his mind. Monsters have no intelligence to climb stairs, but the evidence stubbornly insists otherwise. The creature has broken the very laws of the dungeon. He rubs his temples, visibly irritated by the report, and frankly admits, this is an unprecedented crisis for the guild. His colleague suggests that the anomaly might be artificial, the result of a powerful controlling spell, but the president still doubts. Can it be confirmed so quickly? She reminded him of that man, who is now diving into the labyrinth, and smilingly asks if he has accidentally forgotten about it. The traveler's blade, which was mentioned, shone a silent testimony of the danger that awaited ahead. Lord Percival stood ready. In every movement of his was felt a calm, disciplined power as he prepared to face the unknown. From the depths before him rose a gigantic stone golem, its heavy fist clenched with a rumble, as if tectonic plates were breaking and grinding. The monster lunged forward with terrifying speed, and the earth cracked under the colossal force of its charge. He instantly sprang from his place. His movements were smooth and precise, yet he took the golem's devastating blow with a loud, formidable crash. He sharply broke forward, the blade cut into the stone giant, and the thunderous strike scattered debris across the entire cave floor. The knight dodged the giant, destructive fist. The stone cracked under the impact from the force of the golem's own momentum as it slammed into the ground. With a clenched, precise motion, he drove the sword deep into the very core of the creature. The steel cut the ancient stone. The warrior stood unshaken, and his blade pulsed with rhythmic, magical energy that began to destroy the golem's form. As the golem cracked and crumbled, a dazzling light burst from the fragments, and in the dust appeared a rare artifact glowing. Stone fragments scattered and vanished into oblivion, leaving behind only a quiet, empty chamber. A radiant beam filled the space. Light emanated from the treasure, now openly lying on the dungeon floor. The found artifact becomes a chilling reminder. The 50th floor is the boundary, where only the most elite solo adventurers are allowed. He stands in a flickering aura, at night, called Heavenly Sword. To reach this unseen death, he pushed beyond his own limits. Death, the reality of his place, settles in his mind. He descended to the 96th floor. Sharply clanging metal, he draws his blade. His gaze hardens as he prepares himself to face the horrors of this deadly death. It has been 10 hours since the moment he was lowered to the 14th floor of the laboratory. In the cave, he rests, pausing for a moment to eat after the exhausting battle on the deeper levels. Knight Percival Merculius is an eccentric figure, despite leading the house of the direct line of aristocrats. Instead of social conversations, he prefers to wander the labyrinth alone. He is known as Heavenly Sword. His fame is legendary. At 12 he became a traveler, at 14 A-class, and at 15 S-class after conquering the Zohar bandits. They say his skill is a gift from the heavens. Reflecting on his journey, he acknowledges the value of this research, and says it helped him master the use of Andy's shield against giant enemies. He has 5 ancestral relics: the Alestra bracelet for magic dispersion, the Indy's shield for physical deflection, the Reich's ring for combat magic, the Bolton's amulet for magic absorption, and the Calden's dagger for neutralizing abnormal states. Although no one has yet been able to fully utilize these rare artifacts, he clenches his palm with firm determination and continuously tunes himself to master them. His main goal is clear: to reach the 100th floor, unleash all his power, and conquer the labyrinth's main beast, the metal dragon. He sat by the campfire, which flickered with flames, and was unwavering in his decision to pass all the trials of the labyrinth alone, without being distracted by anyone's interference. The burning tongues danced on the walls while he planned the path ahead, knowing in advance his way would be determined by sharpened blades and formidable enemies. Despite the strength of his inner resolve, his restrained facial expression did not change. Only the ambition hidden inside continued to burn. His gaze froze, and it no longer held the usual worries of ordinary travelers, only a cold focus bordering on silence. Far from the depths of the labyrinth hung quietly the sign of the Adventurers' Guild. It marked the place where bureaucratic order prevailed. Inside, the staff monitored the logistics of his supplies and recorded. The colossal amount of food brought meant his inevitable return to the surface. The guild president gathered those present and acknowledged. Although the knight would likely resist any attempt at formal subjugation, he was a man obsessed with the relentless search for truth. He warned, as long as the labyrinth bosses held their territory, the real threat lay in the unpredictability of those who wandered outside the established rules of the floors. Then, with a voice in which anxiety became increasingly audible, he asked whether the Minotaur would intercept the knight on the return path. She replied, proximity to the surface determines the density of the labyrinth, though she honestly admitted such an encounter was not entirely impossible. The analysis unfolded relentlessly. The probability that they would cross paths with the monster at night was significantly higher than that of an ordinary adventurer on these particular floors. He summed it all up with a grim verdict: the risk of such a confrontation remained enormously high. In the very depths of the labyrinth, the knight lunged forward with blinding speed. The blade sliced through the air to strike the monster. The beast wheezed and roared in pain as the steel bit deeply into its body, and dark ichors splattered against the stone walls. In a moment, the fighters slid aside on their tires. The weight of the clash pressed down on them as they stood on the 6th floor. The Minotaur stood, breathing hoarsely and clutching its wounded chest, from which blood trailed heavily across the floor. The beast froze, squinting slightly as it realized. The strike of this knight did not pierce the heart, it only cut muscle and flesh. It stretched out, and its hands slid into a radiant magical circle that first appeared in the air right before it. With a sharp, sudden movement, the creature snatched a heavy blade from the depths of the portal, and the knight seemed to freeze in awe at this spectacle. The weapon emerged fully. Its weight and the gleam of the blade immediately proved it was deadly dangerous, while the monster gripped it with fierce determination. The Minotaur, with a powerful swing, drew the stolen sword. The air whistled as the massive blade cut through the space between them. The truth was revealed. The creature had learned to use bags, the very inventory spell previously used by travelers it had defeated. The knight noticed the anomaly and felt horror rising. A monster capable of such advanced magic already on the 6th floor was a danger of unprecedented power. He barely managed to dodge the blow. Thoughts raced as he comprehended the terrible speed and intelligence of the beast. He watched as the magical source of light flickered and shimmered. Its glow dimmed under the pressure of the suffocating dungeon atmosphere. The flames suddenly flared with new strength, silently prompting reflection on the unpredictability of the labyrinth. In the deepest darkness of shadows, the beast let out a low, hoarse growl, and its eyes burned with a predatory intelligence, one that stubbornly refused to accept the monstrous form. He responded to the creature's gaze with a calm, firm face, and already in everything that awaited ahead, he felt the grim joy of the challenge. The knight, weapon at the ready, and the demon beast took a battle stance, and the silence in the dungeon cracked under the weight of their deadly clash. A muffled roar rolls across the arena as magical circles flare in the sky, casting sharp light on the crowd below. It cheers wildly. He stands motionless amid the trembling, his gaze never once leaving the spectacle unfolding above him. The atmosphere thickens with tension. The clash between the devil ascending to the very heavens and the sword cutting through the earth is about to ignite, a spectacle simply known as combat. He contemplates the name of the technique, the same as in common usage. Involuntarily, memories surface. The elder recalls the magic user from the Imperial Inspection Martial Arts Tournament 8 years ago and notes him as a rival truly unforgettable. A few days before the current encounter, he sat in the guild president's office and held a quiet conversation. The elder explains, Seaman Comet is incredibly powerful, but his spell requires significant time and a large amount of magical energy, so using it in a one-on-one tournament duel is highly unusual. He listens attentively as the elder adds, what was even more impressive was not the technique itself, but the event that occurred immediately after its application. He tensed as a downpour of dark, star-shaped projectiles rained down from the very top, and each strike thudded into the ground with heavy, rhythmic rumbles. The strikes grew even stronger, and the arena exploded into chaos. The floor turned into a field of explosions and flying debris. Through the ruins, he moved with practiced grace, and his armor shimmered as he overcame the treacherous terrain. Later in the quiet training room, he told the elder about the trials, recalling how he managed to escape from the falling stars almost on a grand scale. The elder listened attentively while he laid out the details. The opponent deliberately avoided a direct strike, choosing a completely different strategy. He replayed what he had seen in his mind once more. The strike went into the ground, but the waves of moving air threw him off rhythm, forcing him to switch to defense. The technique was truly impressive, he admitted. Even for a moment it knocked him out of commission. He could neither attack nor hold defense. The elder added that the hall held its breath. No one could understand how the legendary knight was driven into such a desperate state. The elder gazed intently at the arena. The crowd buzzed with impatience. People wondered what exactly was about to happen at that very moment. His gaze remained fixed and firm outwardly, no sign of the storm that was already gathering strength inside. With a sharp jerk, she extended her hand, and a focused glow flashed in her eyes as she gripped her weapon tighter. The air exploded with a deafening clang of metal blade struck blade, and the fighters clashed in a torrent of swift blows. Their gazes met a silent exchange of determination that slipped between them right in the heat of the clash. He intervened, his voice thundered over the arena, and he ordered the fight to stop immediately. The officials declared the clash over, citing a foul as the reason for the sudden disqualification, and named the winner. He focused on the result and concluded, his opponent's choice was simply absurdly devoid of grace. He sat opposite his master and listened as he explained. An ordinary person could have died in their recent clash, but the heavenly sword broke free and scorched proof of his intuition and rapid combat skill. Mitsar offered a simple agreement, lamenting that the break had stolen from them a truly magnificent fight, yet the result remained a mystery even to him. A shadow of disappointment slid across his face as soon as he recalled the loss of such a worthy adversary. And the master continued, despite the frequent foolish attempts to earn favor with ruthless relatives, the referee's decision was particularly strange. The elder man leaned forward and spoke directly to him like Percival Sama, deliberately touching on the topic of the labyrinth. He slowly, solemnly sipped tea, and his face remained unreadable as he digested the memory of the dangerous place. Breaking the silence, with cold detachment, he remarked that the tea served to him was of excellent quality. His master smiled, offering more as soon as he returned from the labyrinth, and with a humorous note said aloud, for the head of Mercilius' house to be satisfied even with such modest leaves. He sits opposite the master, the silence in the room presses down, and their silent agreement weighs as if it can be felt. Outside the window, the night sky is deep and dark, a silent witness to decisions already ripened inside. The silence breaks as soon as the gaze falls into the depths of the labyrinth. Rhythmic, thunderous strikes of steel against stone echo through the corridors. Within the stone walls, the knight raises a furious, brutal dance-like clash of blades. His sword strikes in rhythmic pulses, colliding with the monster's heavy axes with a dull thud. Sparks scatter in a continuous storm. Violence suffocates the space. The knight narrows his eyes, his gaze fixed firmly on the beast before him. He quietly mutters to himself, acknowledging the creature's stubborn, relentless endurance. He analyzes the situation and notes, the monster's weapon speed and muscular strength far exceed everything he had anticipated. He understands that standard attacks have no effect. yet he keeps his eyes on the creature, hoping that it possesses a rare item capable of breaking this deadlock. The beast narrows its gaze in response. Its predatory look is fixed on the knight, as if primal power still flickers within its body. When the monster swings its heavy axe, the knight parries the blow and manages to grasp a thought. His own longsword is not almighty, so a more precise, refined technique is needed. He instantly launches a rapid, twisted avalanche of strikes. The fury of steel rings out as he presses the creature into defense. The pressure does not weaken. The knight lands a precise thrust. A sharp stroke draws blood from the beast and momentarily confuses it. The momentum of the clash knocks the knight off his feet. For a moment, his step is completely thrown off by the force of the exchange itself. Regaining his composure, he fiercely fixes his gaze on the monster, and the beast shudders at the unexpected turn. Its wide-open eyes reveal shock. He lunged forward, and the blade struck the massive figure of the monster with a loud blow that echoed through the entire chamber. The clash was intensifying. Steel and stone flickered in the pitch-dark haze as he parried and struck, and under the force of their movements, the floor cracked from furious rage. In the heat of the fight, a small vial slipped from his grasp, clattered against the stone floor, and rolled away from the fighters. The Minotaur's eyes widened as soon as it caught sight of the vial. An instinctive understanding washed over the creature. He stood, breathing hoarsely, and every movement of his stance showed exhaustion, as if it had finally reached his very core and began to gnaw at his weakened body. The exhausting training of the lower levels had pushed him to the edge of his physical limits, and the beast had no idea that he carried something entirely different in the potions. He stubbornly clung only to what fatigue had led him to. When the monster launched another fresh attack, he wondered if his carefully crafted feigned weakness had indeed drawn the creature into a trap. With a sharp, desperate movement, he firmly grasped his weapon and froze. Ready for the final, decisive clash, the beast lunged forward to seize him. He barely managed to dodge the beast's massive axe. It came down and crashed into the stone floor with a dull thunder. The Minotaur completed a wide, sweeping overhead strike and forced the knight to retreat, keeping him at a distance. The blade whistled through the air, and a single drop of sweat fell down, emphasizing how tense the clash had become. He lunged forward. The sword sliced through the air in a hopeless attempt to find even one weak spot in the monster's defense. The knight increasingly terrifies. His strikes are too small to reach the vital spots of the beast, so he remains exposed. He deeply roots his feet and slides on a crumb of the labyrinth floor to stabilize his stance for a countermaneuver. With a sharp burst of strength, he pushes against the floor, closing the distance and preparing to meet the next attack up close. His gaze is fixed dead on the monster lunging forward. Determination strengthens, and the heavy muffled blows of his approach echo throughout the chamber. He freezes in a tense standoff, sword aimed at the beast, a burly, fur-covered creature prowling the stone corridor. The knight watches the creature's movements, and with a painful shudder concludes, this is not just a monster responding to attacks, it actively anticipates each of his strikes. He comes to the truth. The demon calculates the reach of its own limbs and weapons, holding its defense so as to always be perfectly out of deadly strike range. His heart thudded in his chest. He decided to pour all his zeal into the fight, no matter what, whether the bastard or his endurance would survive the unbreakable precision with which the monster acts. The creature releases ragged, heavy breathing, and its gaze does not waver, predatory, focused, as if nailed down. Somewhere nearby, energy suddenly crackles. Flashes tear through space, reminding of the labyrinth's nature, while he compresses himself and prepares for the final clash. His gaze hardens, eyes narrow, and he silently, boldly challenges his opponent. The monster roars and lunges forward with a deafening scream to shatter this dead pause, to destroy everything in its path. He meets the beast's attack with maximum concentration. Weapon strikes weapon, and blades whistle in a whirlwind of steel. There is no time for words here. In this brutal duel, the blades are allowed to speak a language that matters. The warrior and the beast clash in a raging whirlwind of steel, and the air trembles from the force of their collision. He extinguishes the devastating blow, parrying it closely. His eye does not leave the monster's furious gaze. The blades dance in a deadly rhythm. A torch flared nearby. The flame twitched wildly and spun in a furious vortex, lifted by the force of its own movements. The exchange does not stop for a moment, an unceasing cycle of strike and parry, where hesitation has no place. With a guttural roar, the creature lunged forward, jaws snapped sharply in the air, displaying primal rage. He extinguishes the heavy attack's blow. Boots slide on the stone floor, yet he still maintains his balance. The beast squints. A flash of irritation crosses its features as the opponent does not fall. He stands unshakably, the armor stained not with the monster's blood, but his own, evidence of the price this battle demanded. He grits his teeth and endures the relentless attack, while the monster grows increasingly furious that it cannot land a decisive blow on such a small opponent. The warrior lunged forward, armor clanged against the monster's scales, and he barely managed to dodge the devastating strike. With a sharp circular motion, he deflected the heavy axes, forcing the creature to realize its mindless rage cannot overcome the heavenly sword. But the distance between them began to melt. The beast stretched forward, threatening to break through his defense. Fatigue finally overcame him, and his movements faltered for a moment. The monster immediately seized the pause and unleashed a thunderous strike. The force of the collision threw him backward. His breath faltered, but he still held his ground, keeping the blade ready for a counterattack. He pressed his boots into the ground with force to withstand, barely avoiding a repeated swing of that huge axe that bit into the stone floor. With a desperate sweep, he retreated, carving out space for himself. His body screamed and demanded rest while the duel pressed to the limit. He is struck against the cold stone floor. The blow resonates through the armor as the beast looms above. Trying to break free from staggering, he lunges forward. The blade traces a desperate arc across the monster's skin. The warrior spins with fluid grace. Lunging forward, he attacks the creature, but his movements falter as the beast begins to sway. Balance betrays him. A sudden, brutal strike cuts through the silence. Steel clashes against steel, and waves from the impact scatter in the air as metal bites into the horn. The blow forcefully throws the creature backward. A dull, heavy rumble rolls through the chamber as it struggles with all its might to stay on its feet. He presses the advantage. The sword chops again and again, building strength until a sharp gleam flashes in his eyes and the focus suddenly shifts. The beast roars and, swinging its giant body with terrifying speed, nearly hits him as he barely avoids a deadly blow. These sleds slide across the floor, stopping only when the monster rises above them again, and two fighters freeze in a deadly, suffocating confrontation. He stood, gasping, his heart pounding like a hammer in his chest, while the beast before him struggled with its last strength, trying to catch its own breath. The warrior's gaze was fixed on the mangled bodies, which whimpered in time with the creature's chest rhythm. An involuntary tremor passed through his body as he prepared for the next assault. Despite exhaustion, an involuntary and cruel admission flashed in his mind. The incredible stubbornness of this monster was simply astonishing. Nearby, a small flame flickered, casting long shadows, as if reflecting the primal, burning rage that the Minotaur concealed. Blood oozed from his wounds and stained his armor, yet he did not betray his composure. His eyes narrowed as he prepared to transcend the limits of his own body. With a sharp metallic clang, he drew his blade. A flash of determination confused the beast as the final clash began. The beast looms over the fallen knight. Heavy steps echo dully on the cold stone floor as it closes the distance. It moves deliberately, heavily, and devastatingly. Each step pronounces a verdict on the warrior lying prone. A predatory gleam flickers in the creature, its pupil fixed on the broken figure before it. Beneath the giant furry limb, the ground trembles. It is already preparing to strike. Suddenly, the knight shifts position. A circular aura of energy bursts forward to catch the beast by surprise. The force of the sudden counterattack clung to the creature's paw. It cut through muscles and tore the fur. Blood fountains into the air as soon as the strike finds its target, and, cutting the balance, disables the beast. The monster recoils in shock. Its face contorts in pain, and it jumps back, clutching the mangled limb from which now flows bloody red blood. The beast exhales sharply, gasping for air in short, desperate breaths, while waves of pain from the wounded leg roll through its huge body. In the silence, a faint arc beam barely flickered. It marked that the deadly barrier was already here. It was Percival's blade that created this sphere of inevitable death, cutting off everything that dared to cross the boundary of its reach. Behind this shimmering defense, she hunched over, and his posture froze in tense, alert readiness. The monster snarled fiercely, realizing, under such a threat, closing in was simply impossible. It decided that patience was its only ally. If it just waited, the man would inevitably break from his own exhaustion. Blood continued to flow from its own terrible wound, a grim confirmation that it too had reached its absolute limit. Her audacious snarl quickly turned into a crooked smile as soon as she decided to wait. Victory, she said, would only come to those who endure. He lunged forward sharply. The giant figure crashed into the ground with a muffled roar, and the rumble shook even the foundations of the exquisite building. Glancing and stopping again, the beast jerks, trying to stay on its feet. Its breathing is ragged until the burden of the struggle finally takes its toll. Spitting blood onto the stone floor, he begins to doubt his own mind, whether he has become a fool for stubbornly continuing to choose this path. His awareness fades. He is no longer drawn to the sweet, unnecessary triumph of victory. He is called by the pure, unadorned essence of battle. His eyes flare with primal power, his gaze fixed on a single goal: to enter a fight to the death against a truly formidable opponent. Looking away from the fallen knight, he notices a motionless figure. His own wounds, oozing, spill crimson onto the cold ground. Now he understands. His target is neither the head nor the heart of the knight. He is sought by that which is deeper than all, embedded in the very essence of the warrior. The beast recognizes the truth. The sword is not just a weapon, but the very being of the knight, and it is this blade he must shatter to claim his final reward. He digs his hooves into the stone floor, and his massive hands tighten their grip on the weapon with a single, destructive focus. From above, the monster looms over the fallen knight. A circle of light captures the vulnerability of his opponent. A heavy exhale bursts from his nostrils as he watches the torch tremble nearby. Its fading light reflects in the motionless eyes of the knight. He takes a deliberate step forward, and the heavy, dull thud of his hoof cuts through the silence of the empty chamber, spreading echoes. With a sharp, brutal motion, he swings the axe. The blade cuts the air in a wide, deadly arc. The strike breaks the silence with a flash. It blinds so much that the eyes sting, and just as the dust settles, it is visible. The blade of the knight bends under incredible pressure. A deafening crack of metal tearing and ripping itself into pieces cuts through the silence like a knife. The knight's gaze sharply widens. The source of his strength finally gives way, and the mind recognizes defeat. He tightly grips the hilt of his broken blade. Now the steel is only a torn, useless fragment. With a muffled, thunderous roar, the beast descends. Its gigantic axe blade cuts through the air, paving the way for destruction. The strike lands with fierce force, scattering red, bloody splashes around. The echo passes through the knight's armor. Incredible power looms, as if it will crush him completely now. Blood splashes on the cold stone walls as the assault pressure tears through his defense. He falls to his knees and gasps sharply for air, while the monster looms over him. His own breathing falters, becoming heavy and ragged. Raising his gaze, he freezes, staring into the abyss of his own defeat. Before his eyes it drifts, and the world begins to fade. The beast raises the bloodied axe one last time, and its eyes blaze with the cold intent of an executioner. He squeezes out an iron grip. The large hand crushes the knight's armor and body, turning everything into cold stone floor. The beast does not cease its attack. Its eyes blaze with sadistic hunger, and it forces the maimed warrior to endure even more torment. A guttural roar bursts from its throat. It demands even more resistance, more pain, and more life for the prey which is already dying. It roars madly its twisted desires and commands the knight to hold on, to continue the battle, endure the suffering, and refuse release by death. Beneath the bloodied visor, the knight's eyes twitch, and in the ruins of his body still flickers a dim, stubborn spark. He managed to squeeze out a grimace, a bloody, terrible smile. The strength does not give up even when the armor is shattered, and lies around like completely broken. The monster freezes in the air. Its predatory gaze fixes on one point, and it squints, feeling unexpected resistance coming from the broken mass. Silence covers the hall, leaving only the abandoned remnants of the knight's armor scattered on the blood-soaked floor. His gaze lingers on the broken remains of the shield. Once a flawless surface, it has now become a dense web of torn, sharp cracks. The cracks have deepened further, finally reflecting the total collapse of defense this night. When the beast loomed over the broken warrior, something strange and unfamiliar stirred in its monstrous heart, a barely noticeable glimmer burning, not only with rage. Deep in the stone corridors, the beast still crouched in the shadows, its gigantic body coils as if in tense anticipation. It fixes its gaze into the distance, and its eyes blaze with a single predatory focus. A muffled, rhythmic clatter of hooves strikes the floor, and a creature emerges into the blinding brightness of light. Its joints crack under the pressure of colossal, unnatural growth. The body swells as the force surges like a wave through its frame. Steam rises from its skin as muscles ripple and harden like stone, and the air itself hisses from the tearing intensity of this transformation. At the peak of this evolution, the Minotaur clearly understands. Its power has already gone beyond the boundaries that once seemed unbreakable. Nearby, an armored knight figure is stuck in the mud, and broken his consciousness fades as he watches the monster rise horrifically upward. The beast towers over the battlefield, a titan reborn. Its presence is absolute, and no one is able to challenge it. It looms over the fallen knight, its gaze fixed on the remnants of that battle. Suddenly, sharply and dazzlingly, a glow flashes from a thrown gadget, and the labyrinth seems to signal. The energy has changed. The beast stands amid a pile of armor and weapons. Its gigantic figure casts a long, eerie shadow over the prey. It looks at everything with cold calculation. As life fades within these walls, physical remains disappear, leaving only lifeless property outside. With a heavy hand, it begins to gather the scattered items, metal rings as it pulls in the night's spoils. A broken sword and small items lie in its palm, trophies of victory that have left the labyrinth floor empty of its former inhabitant. He snorts and attention shifts as soon as he reveals a shining magic circle and directs the power he has just gained. With the last, decisive jerk, he drives the magic into the ground, claiming the space as his own. He felt the heavy burden of recent battles, wounds healed during the leveling process, but muscles and heart cried out for rest. Seeking relief, he retreated deep into the labyrinth. Heavy steps thundered on the stone as he searched for a place to sleep. The dark, narrow corridor gave him the solitude he needed, far from any intruders. Several days passed in the Sazerdin labyrinth, where on the first floor small beast-speaking creatures, resembling wolves, prowled the damp stone passages. The young traveler moved confidently and precisely. He drew his blade to lay one of these creatures down with a single swift, deadly stroke. He wiped sweat from his brow, clutching the honestly earned coins, and signaled his team to head to the guild. As they walked, one of the squad members questioned the wisdom of entering such a dangerous place and noted that their survival was only luck that had kept them alive so far. At the Travelers Guild in Mycenae village, Gillinks was late but still arrived. He apologized to Logan for the delay, as he was repeatedly scattered by numerous errands. He took a sip of tea and sank into thoughts about the recent audience with the king, recalling how the second queen had already taken measures against the cold that morning. Old Maz impatiently inquired about the truthfulness of this information, doubting whether the queen had really given such hints. He pondered, in the royal court, conflicts do not arise by themselves. They are born from neglecting how exactly to wield power. They spoke about the nature of monsters. From a monster's perspective, humans are the true villains, and he recalled hearing the same from a sage many years ago. He clung to one thought. Although monsters do not measure things with words like happiness or justice, they still have their own scales of success and failure. Understanding froze in his gaze, value and logic intertwined by common threads that bind humans and monsters together. He sighed quietly and said that humans are often crueler to monsters than they deserve, thus emphasizing a reproach to his own humanity. A groan interrupted the conversation, as if someone knocked on the door, and he shifted his gaze to the incident with the Minotaur, awaiting further reports from higher levels. He studies the evidence intently, his eyebrows knitting in deep concern as he asks what exactly could have happened. Guildhall buzzes with restless energy. The space is filled with a sea of grumbling adventurers, whispering and spinning anxious speculations. He lifts the found traveler's medal. Its surface quivers with a barely audible, persistent hum as he confirms it belongs to the legendary swordsman. The elder asks him to remain calm and advises to double-check everything again to be 100% sure of the origin of these items. Clenching the evidence tightly in his fist, he notes, the amount of equipment is so colossal that no lone traveler could carry it, meaning this is the property of an elite party led by Morin Sam. Nearby, a traveler cuts into the conversation and explains, he is not the leader, and this is not some official team. He just hired passersby to help carry that unbearable burden which he himself stumbled upon and uncovered. They exchanged puzzled glances. Why would such a high-ranking warrior work on the 6th floor, right by the stairs to the 5th? In the most remote thickets of the labyrinth, the truth lies bound and neglected, hidden among a pile of abandoned supplies. He stood among the restored equipment, and his voice rose each time with nervous excitement as he pressed his comrade to start evaluating rare items and inquire whether the guild statute and the order of distribution of such treasures would indeed apply to them. Turning back to his colleague, he asked if he could hand over the rest of the tasks. He requested a moment of rest. She confirmed the request with a nod, saying she would take on the distribution procedures and wait for the final evaluation results. The heavy door creaked and opened. He stepped over the office threshold, and his appearance immediately drew the attention of the man sitting at the desk. He spoke with a heavy heart and finally admitted, among the found remains, they came across the fool's boots. He explained that those boots were used as weights for training, proof of how harsh and dangerous the methods were to reach the surface from the deepest levels. And then it dawned on him, these cursed things were created to significantly reduce the physical capabilities of the wearer, an icy, cruel disability bonus. Frustration boiled over completely, and he, unable to restrain himself, struck the table with his fist with all his might. The knock echoed, as if the very weight of this discovery. He stood trembling, composure shattered the moment he realized even in the fool's boots no monster on the 6th floor should have been able to fell the heavenly sword. The improbability of this made him clench his hands so hard that the table creaked from the tension, and wooden cracks splintered under his fingers. The man's face twisted with rage as he realized. The heavenly sword did not fall on some ordinary monster, it was lured into a cunning, treacherous trap. He gritted his teeth, and his eyes blazed with indignation. He simply refused to accept the reality of such a humiliating end. The fallen warrior sought only the life of a wanderer, turning away from the glory of the superficial world and seeking balance in the depths of the labyrinth. Returning to his partner, he ordered the guild leader to lend his strength to uncover the truth behind the trap that attributed the heavenly sword. The president urged him to remain calm and consider the full seriousness of the situation, but the man stubbornly refused to calm down, clinging to his feverish anxiety. He struck the table with all his might and sharply asked if they truly believed the Minotaur was capable of overthrowing heaven and earth, and the president, without averting his gaze, added that a new confirmed anomaly had appeared in the laboratory. The president warned that the status of the heavenly sword would cause noticeable waves in the human world, hinting, this was the echo of the very tragedy that befell Hazel, as if it had opened her again. He snorted disdainfully at any distractions and insisted, ignoring the immediate anomaly unfolding right before them would be a grave mistake. He peers intently, demanding an answer, whether the truth of his loyalty lies outside in the world or deep within the labyrinth. The elder man swallows convulsively, his eyes narrowing as he processes the weight of the accusation. He admits he is not fit for this position, rejects the insinuation that he abandoned his duty, and asks, can the price of life really be reduced to the value of a corpse or even just memories? The conversation flows to the fallen knight. He is called a dear friend, yet it is emphasized that time will not wait. They must track and stop the Minotaur and find out how exactly his death is connected to the demise of the heavenly sword. He leans forward sharply, his face hardening, and pleads for help aloud, on the verge of despair. The legendary mage stands as if through legends. His presence presses, and he is called by name. In the depths of the Sazard labyrinth, on the 10th floor, a single drop of water raises a ripple on the surface of the pool, and the silence around immediately reveals the silent, gloomy presence of the boss. The monster suddenly opens its eyes wide. In the darkness flashes a predatory hunger from which a chill runs down the spine. It waits in the shadows until a group of travelers suddenly emerges into its lair. Their voices echo with arrogant contempt as they talk about the rarity of things such creatures leave behind. They laugh among themselves, brush off the danger as if it were just a usual preparation for the deeper floors, and have no idea that they are being watched. Before the newcomers can recover, the monster grows to full gigantic height and looms over them. Its massive body casts a long shadow that closes their showy bravery. The adventurers prepare for battle. The first carelessness disappears, giving way to a gloomy realization. Before them is a real Minotaur. He grips his weapon even tighter. His hand does not tremble, and his confidence does not waver as he waits for prey in the upcoming slaughter. With a thunderous strike, the creature lunges into attack. Its incredible strength breaks the silence of the night, and he hoarsely screams, pleading desperately for rescue. The night shatters in the air with fragments, blood splashes, and the colossal power of the monster turns the clash into a one-sided massacre. It stood amid the bloody carnage, and the gear of the fallen traveler was scattered like discarded toys. The beast effortlessly dismantled it. Its strength far exceeded their pathetic level 30 capabilities. With a usual wet sound, it wiped the blood from its elongated nose. The movements were deliberate and strangely refined. The beast crouched low, and its gigantic body folded into a tense, new, and eerie silence. This evolution went beyond mere physical strength. A fundamental shift in its very nature occurred. A flash of cognitive power swept over its mind, and it suddenly gained the ability for complex analysis and processing of information it had never had before. It released a heavy, focused exhale. The sound echoed like a reverberation through the silent labyrinth. In heightened consciousness, it began to dissect the last duel against the night. It lost every strike in parry, calculating dozens of alternative outcomes to master the fight through cold precision. He shuddered. He suddenly realized that he had snatched victory in a battle he was supposed to lose. It was the first time he faced an opponent so formidable that it felt like it cracked inside, and he trembled from the sheer force of the technique that was displayed. The beast stood silently, and its face revealed nothing as it pondered the weight of this encounter. The flexible arc of the blade, carved in the void by its opponent, was etched into the creature's thoughts an indelible mark that would never fade. A sudden radiance pierced him. He noticed a pack of lesser monsters prowling the dark corridors. He moved forward. Heavy steps echoed dully in the stone passage as he approached the sacks, now with renewed determination. Immersed in thought, he pondered the swordsman's aspirations, and did not even suspect whether the peak the man was reaching for was the very destination point he himself was destined to reach. With determination tempered by his evolution, he prepared for the path ahead, eager for even greater enemies and even deadlier clashes. In the depths of the seventh floor of Gazardin Labyrinth, travelers quietly whisper in shock. Could the rumors about the monster with a cow's head really become reality right before them? They silently, taut as strings, watch as the giant creature suddenly sinks. Its majestic figure bends, as if an invisible weight suddenly pressed it to the ground. Recognizing the setup, the archer decides to test the beast's endurance and shoots a specialized Junker's arrow to measure its true strength, without rushing forward with a direct, reckless attack. She draws the bowstring to the limit and releases the arrow with precision. The charge hits the minotaur, but only clangs against its skin and does not penetrate. Yet despite this, the group delivers an even more powerful blow, and a thunderous explosion devours the creature with smoke and debris. When the dust finally settles, the travelers prepare for the next stage of their tactical clash. The smoke disperses, and in view is the minotaur's arm. Its wrist is severed, confirming that their coordinated attack worked. She surveys the result with grim satisfaction. The beast is incredibly resilient, but they manage to have its combat capability. Now only the still-holding hand remains to be neutralized. She is paralyzed by disbelief as the beast, despite the mortal wound, begins to move again with restored, unnatural vitality. Right before their eyes, an arcane circle flares in the air, and the creature reaches to snatch a potion. Its wounds stick together and heal before their eyes. The liquid dripped into his mouth, a desperate act of survival that broke the very laws of the labyrinth. While the potion worked, the monster's shattered wrist began to heal again. The flesh twisted and hardened back, turning into a deadly weapon. She realized the horror. The beast had learned to imitate human alchemy and screamed, ordering the others to retreat immediately. The creature stood above everyone, and its presence radiated a new, terrible threat, one that went beyond the capabilities of its kind. Even the monster froze for a moment from its sudden recovery, clenching and unclenching its fingers as if practicing them in a creepy, steady rhythm. It learned the power of the red potion, turning the traveler's own salvation into a weapon for his destruction. He bends the newly regrown arm. The joints crack as he tests how strong the restored limb has become. Far from the depths of the southern labyrinth, the outskirts of Mycenae City lie quietly under a gigantic, gloomy sky. The Travelers Guild sign hangs in the most prominent place, clearly indicating the center of activity for those who dare to side with the unknown. Inside, a group of experienced travelers is already gathering, their faces stern, as they discuss the threats relentlessly growing in Mace. On the table lies a single radiant flower, but its petals shimmering with a soft, ethereal light. The guild president sits at the table and, carefully examining the mysterious bloom, simultaneously flips through stacks of official documents. He notices, to properly evaluate such a rare item, it will take a whole month even for Heavenly Sword before handing it over to the elderly, bearded man, who examines the bud with a penetrating gaze. The bearded man narrows his eyes, his thoughts shift toward the labyrinth, and he will speculate which exact monster could be connected to this find. He pondered the report and noted, the creature moved between floors with the same ease as an experienced traveler. The idea of a monster with such abilities seemed nonsense, but the evidence weighed heavily on his mind. He drew parallels between the monster and travelers, considering that both sides could utilize the unique properties of the labyrinth. A terrible realization overwhelmed him. The monster was not just surviving, it was leveling up. This bloody prospect revealed the fate of the previous party. As soon as the Minotaur became stronger in combat, its physical and mental abilities began to evolve. He swallowed his saliva, and his thoughts spun around the fallen knight, whether the beast had truly surpassed even the most otherworldly of legendary warriors. The question burned in his mind: what unimaginable power is the Minotaur now capable of mastering? Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. His concentration was snapped like a string. He had to interrupt this grim process. He exhaled, furrowing his brow, contemplating the arrival of the stranger, and the assistant immediately noticed his sudden paleness. She said that a maid from the Mercilius family had arrived to speak with him directly. The elder man processed the news and confirmed. The visit was unrelated to Heavenly Sword, as they had not yet released an official statement. From the mere mention of the Mercillius family, it was clear that it threw him off balance. His tone remained calm when he gave the order to his assistant to bring the visitor to the office, and she immediately confirmed the instruction. She returned to announce the arrival of Panya Laban, the housekeeper of the Mercillius family, accompanied by Julius from the Zeldra family. The man towering in the doorway calls himself Panya Laban. His formidable figure fills the room as he stands next to the young companion. He gestures to the table to the place where the guild president, Logan, is seated. He politely greets them, offers tea, and acknowledges the noble status of his guests. They settle in the silence of the office, the atmosphere thick with the weight of formal introductions and the hidden significance of this meeting. The visitor clarifies the honorary titles. Zeldra is the name of the nobleman's mother, after which he solemnly introduces the young Julius Sama. He reveals the true origin of the boy. Julius Amma is the legitimate heir of the Mercillius family, and this name carries incredible weight. The revelation immediately stirs commotion around him. Everyone learned that he is the son of the Heavenly Sword, and there are even rumors about a marriage. Waves of shock ripple through the entire hall. To the sudden irritation of the guild leader, he calmly responds that no excessive solemnity is needed, and dryly reminds, they are currently on foreign territory. Next, he expresses gratitude for the care shown to the Heavenly Sword, and adds that the legendary warrior always felt calm under the vigilant supervision of the president. He continues the explanation. The young lord always found his way back to Mycenae, and then insists there is something vitally important that the guild president must definitely see. The old man's eyes sharply widened in shock. He recognized the item that was just pulled out, and his hands instinctively moved in the air, weaving a protective magical sign. With a heavy, luxurious case, the locks clicked and it opened, revealing a crystal sphere. It rested and cracked, and its inner glow faded helplessly. The boy explained, in the morning the sphere was simply perfect, but by evening its flame had disappeared, so the daily routine abruptly broke down suddenly and eerily. He again shifted his gaze to the guild president. His voice was steady, as he begged to be told at least something where his lord was now. Tension in the room rolled like a wave when the guild president received the receipt for signature, and at that moment, employees came in to serve food and drinks, breaking the heavy atmosphere only for a moment. They sat in the silence of the office, and above their meeting hung a heavy taste of the disappearance of the missing lord. A letter addressed to the house was spread out on the table. Next to it lay a list of found items and an adventure medal that once belonged to the missing knight. He solemnly announced, the remains of Lord Percival were found on the 6th floor of Sazard and Labyrinth. Noble continued, and his voice trembled with grief as he spoke about his father, while the man opposite listened with a stern, focused expression. Noble continued, and his voice trembled with grief as he spoke about his father, while the man opposite listened with a stern, focused expression. He recounted how the fallen lord always found joy in the labyrinth, issuing challenges to fair duels up to his own last, helpless fall. He became active and solemnly promised, the truth about what happened to Lord Percival and the Minotaur would be revealed without any delay. A crumb of hope still flickered as he spoke about the legendary sorcerer, his friend and his master. Oppressive silence was shattered by a sudden harsh blow, and this sound echoed through the depths. Somewhere deep on the 4th floor of Sazard and Labyrinth, a hand reached down to lift the fallen. Under the weight of the looming threat, the ground cracked. A sphere of concentrated energy materializes, swirling in a vortex with fierce determination, as the beast prepares to unleash its power. Energy explodes in a dazzling flash, and the nearby surroundings are instantly devoured by the roar of destruction. As the dust settles, a solitary figure steps forward calm, unshakable before the chaos. He stands motionless, his gaze fixed firmly on the thread, and his posture radiates an aura of hardened authority. The beast tears forward through the air, showering the space with a hail of projectiles, and those, stopping mid-flight, collide with an invisible barrier. With a deafening roar, the creature charges forward again, but he does not budge an inch. His hands hold the stand firmly. He holds the defense. The monster delivers a devastating blow, but he does not retreat, remains in place, holds the position, and prepares for the inevitable clash. A spark of sudden insight flashes in his eyes as the creature's jaws snap shut. From the force of the blow, it is about to crush him. He unleashes a sharp, explosive burst of rage. The blade strikes with such raw, reckless power that it is about to break the very foundations of the magical defense. The hand rests calmly on the table, and and the fingers are adorned with a ring bearing a distinct emblem that glows brightly. A bearded warrior presents his companion with a delicate, radiant flower and says that he specifically wanted to give it to him. He explains this is a ceruleus turtle, infused with the vibrations of his own life essence, and a reproach confirmation that he remains alive as long as it continues to shine. The recipient bows his head, accepting the full weight of the responsibility placed upon him. The warrior commands, report to the king immediately as soon as the light inside the shell goes out. The guild president silently observes, and he harbors a doubt, whether the rumors are true that he exchanged an immortal body for shelter in a single step with the king of the underworld. When the warrior says that the rumors have become too interesting, a smile appears on his face, restrainedly mocking, but fully conscious. Suddenly, the pinnacle of wisdom and leadership descends with devastating force-crushing resistance with iron and flesh, like his own mind. He stood still until a huge monster burst into attack, and then the blade struck heavily, precisely hitting him head-on right into the beast's rage. The monster jerked back, its eyes sharply widened as soon as it realized that the explosion was only a lure, a tactical, barely noticeable construct to draw its guard into the light. In the next moment, gaining momentum, it released a stream of energy. The strike split the ground beneath the beast and forced it to kneel. The creature hissed madly in pain. Smoke rose from its scorched hide, and it struggled with all its might to recover after the merciless assault. He carefully studied the beast, critically assessing its potential. Its combat power noticeably exceeded that of an ordinary human and reached up to the level of a level 40 warrior. And suddenly the monster began to hum, pressing its clawed hand to the ground to strike the radiant, intricate magical circle. The earth trembled as the arcane sigil pulsed with dark light, clearly confirming the forbidden technique is activating. He froze in disbelief, realizing that in 50 years of adventures, he had never encountered such a strange and dangerous anomaly in the labyrinth. He stared into the distance, while thoughts raced wildly in his head. Could it be that he was really seeing a fragment of some evil god? The beast loomed closer, massive, beastly features radiated an aura of ancient, wild power. A soft, rhythmic glow flowed from the mysterious flower and cast strange light on the surroundings. In the silence of the guild president's office in the city of Mycenae, the atmosphere immediately became businesslike, restrained, and official. He explained the cold truth of the labyrinth. Every adventurer who dies there gives their lives and property to the guild, regardless of any previous wills. The president confirmed, although the guild claims ownership rights, it still gives the families of the deceased a chance to buy back the property. Without taking his eyes off the ledger, the visitor asked to buy back 3 specific items, those listed in the inventory. The president explained, everything will be decided by the valuation, but at the same time honestly admitted he had never even heard of the rare artifacts being requested, and yet he agreed to proceed without any problems. He scrutinized the inventory list. His brow furrowed as soon as he noticed the absence of the Calden dagger and the Alestra bracelet, and immediately began to inquire where his master's items had gone. The elder man replied, the bracelet is a sacred treasure, granted by the goddess Farah to the founding king, and later passed down to the Mercilius family. He emphasized, without this sacred relic, Julius Sama has no right to inherit Lord Percival. The elder continued, nodding. As soon as the king calls, the head of the Mercilius family traditionally puts on the bracelet to enter. He added that the Holy One then takes the bracelet, further emphasizing the connection between the founding king's lineage and the head of the family. Losing the bracelet would mean more than just a blow to reputation. He demanded its return, although he admitted the dagger could wait. He pondered this mystery and concluded, if Percival's remains were found on the 6th floor, then the items either disappeared during that fatal event or afterward, since their divine blessings would not let them simply vanish. He concluded that the artifacts did not disappear somewhere along the way, but precisely then in the moment of tragedy, on the 6th floor. He pressed the guild president for an answer and questioned whether all recovered goods had indeed been submitted. However, he himself remained ice-cold skeptical. Stealing from his lord for any ordinary thief, it was simply impossible. The president began to explain his strict procedure, how he used magic that reveals lies against all 19 people involved in the transport to ensure they were not guilty of the original owner's death. He listened as the president led to the main point. If the guild honestly pays a reward for returned items, then a passerby has no logical motive to steal them thorough. No random scoundrels could be involved here. Suddenly it became clear to him. It was a carefully calculated strike against the Mercilius family. He demanded to know how likely such a trap was, feeling that malicious fingers were hiding deep within the labyrinth. The guild president weighs the harsh reality. If Lord Percival truly died, then pressure to name a successor will only increase. But the chances of retrieving the bracelet from the labyrinth are almost zero. He turns to the seasoned warrior and admits aloud, if the legendary dragon slayer speaks of those ancient stories, then there must be at least a grain of truth in them. The conversation jumps to artifacts. The president notes that despite the expert craftsmanship and protective seals placed on these items, the crystal's light has gone out, which means no trace remains regarding their current condition. Suddenly, he is struck by a sharp thought. If these things are not visible from the outside, then they are still trapped somewhere deep in the labyrinth, either lost or discarded by the previous owner. In the shadow looms a dark, monstrous silhouette, a minotaur, a beast who declared, "These things belong to him." The warrior presses the president and demands answers. His steel gaze does not waver, and the question is direct: is there hidden knowledge about the creature? The weight of what is happening presses in the air. It is enough to recall that the minotaur casts a mirage of fear over the room. Yet despite all the urgency, the president remains steadfast. He insists that the results of the ongoing investigation must be awaited before making any hasty moves. He leaned forward with a completely serious expression and asked permission to enter the labyrinth. They can track the artifact's location and want to first explore the 6th floor. The guild leader listened carefully, acknowledged the inevitable risks, but at the same time noted, the guild does not have the authority to forbid entry to the laboratory. He admitted the possibility of treachery cannot be ruled out, so ultimately he agreed to allocate the necessary escorts and guides for the mission. With a confident smile, the veteran offered his own services and insisted that despite decades of retirement, he is capable of helping them. Inside the interior of the 4th floor of the Sazerdom Labyrinth, the fighter stood among deserted stones, his senses sharpened, and he clearly heard the hoarse, guttural breathing of a hidden predator. Without warning, a hail of shells whistled through the air and thundered into the ground around him, scattering fragments with explosive force. He barely managed to dodge the deadly blows. The earth split open from the pressure of the attack as he prepared to strike back at the invisible assailant. A giant fireball burst forward, but he instantly deflected the scorching heat with a single sharp movement and kept his eyes fixed on the threat emerging from the shadows. He lunged forward with blinding speed, and his blade, striking the ground, shattered the stone floor with an explosion. Debris flew up in a wild wave of rubble. When the dust settled, he stood amid the ruins. His figure held the space as he prepared to unleash another devastating blow. His target was toppled from the force that crushed its defense. A damp, hoarse sound escaped. Above the fallen enemy, a glowing, intricate magical circle flared. It pinned him in place with oppressively radiant energy. He breathed heavily, but his focus did not waver as he continued to channel his power through the chamber. The dull rumble of a millstone and the crack of breaking bones echoed. His eyes narrowed. A harsh realization slowly overwhelmed him. The opponent possessed a power that defied ordinary understanding. He pondered that flawless mastery. This fighter wielded magic with a fluidity and lethality he had never encountered, not even in any mage. Reality solidified completely. Before him stood a force of nature, a being whose might seemed boundless, yet terrifyingly precise. He stood amid the swirling dust clouds, not averting his gaze from the beast before him, a snarl quiet, predatory, like the premonition of an inevitable strike. Observing the creature's movements, he realized, the interval between their actions is a tactical window. If he catches the pause the beast habitually takes relying on potions, the fight can be finished. He focused his power. His hands flared with bright, concentrated light. With a sharp, decisive jerk, he lunged forward. The ground cracked from the weight of his strike. He flashed through the air like a burst of light and left the minotaur stunned by his incredible speed. In just a moment, he dodged the fierce, sweeping attack of the beast, the very one that was slipping towards him. Their gazes froze for a moment in a ghastly, silent clash of raw power and primal instinct. The minotaur clenched the heavy axe, swung with all his might, and in the final, furious embrasure, he managed to hit. Casually, he moved the massive blade away with a shimmering energy barrier, exposing the beast for a devastating counterattack. He lunged forward, his fist blazing with concentrated energy, and the strike landed so hard it broke the last defenses of the minotaur. The priestess dashed after her blade traced a sharp arc in the air, and she engaged in a bloody dance of steel and fury with the monster. She slides across the stone floor, barely avoiding the devastating blow that shatters the ground where she was just a moment ago. The minotaur presses the assault. His axes strike the radiant magical barrier, which hums with protective energy, forcing the priestess to frantically search for the right blow. She releases a flash of light, but as soon as the energy bursts out, a cold fear appears in her chest. Her magic is powerless against the bare thought of the monster. The beast lunges forward with a jerk, and its gigantic hand rushes through the air without the slightest harm, while the priestess skillfully steps aside. A mysterious ring flashes on her finger, disrupting the very flow of magic. The side edge of the band catches the observer's gaze, and suddenly everything becomes chillingly clear to him. This is the Alastair ring. Legends speak of the hereditary attire of the Mercillius family, a relic imbued with a single absolute power, capable of nullifying any magic. She freezes in complete disbelief, trying to understand how the ring can work despite the divine restrictions supposedly imposed on it, and wonders if the knight truly possesses such a forbidden treasure. He stood firm and explained, the power of the ring is intended only for the head of his family. He dismissed the idea that a stranger could raise it, insisting that such a possibility is impossible. The beast roared so that its voice echoed, firmly and confidently, as if only those recognized by the family line can wield such power. With a thunderous blow, it struck the ground with a massive fist, crushing the soil beneath its own weight. Fragments scattered in all directions. The force of the blow pushed forward an explosive wave, tearing through the layers of air around. She pressed her palm even deeper into the crater, and the earth trembled, groaning under the colossal pressure of her attack. A sharp hiss broke out from the point of contact. It seemed as if the very air recoiled from the wild, uncontrollable power of the beast. Despite the destruction, the target stubbornly did not move, and the creature flared with fierce irritation as soon as it realized the prey had not yet fallen. In a furious rage, it unleashed a merciless series of blows, striking rhythmically and deafeningly, until the ground shook violently. He tore out a primal roar, and a great hand, full of fierce rage, bit into the earth without any breaks. Under the weight of his relentless assault, the earth split, and shockwaves rolled through the ruins, erasing everything in their path. As if there was not enough air, he stopped and froze. His eyes widened as it became clear. His target did not move at all, despite the chaos around. Suddenly, ominous energy flared. A figure rose from the debris, defying the brute force that had just knocked it down. For a moment, his face twisted in genuine shock. He saw how incredibly resilient his opponent was. The air seemed to squeeze the chest. Dark, swirling shadows rumbled like thunder, signaling the course of the battle was already changing. Tentacles of darkness surged forward, wrapping around him, while a voice echoed through the void and questioned the dark pact that had granted him this immortal cursed form. The transformation was complete, and behind remained a monster, a shadow-forging entity that disregarded the laws of life and death. After a brutal confrontation, the sorcerer shed his human form and emerged over the battlefield as a terrible, twisted creature looming above. The beast freezes in disbelief as the creature spins and bursts into a fierce dark vortex, and its presence covers everything with an all-consuming and insidious gloom. He slashes with a whip-like appendage, striking with unnatural speed and terrifying precision. The strike connects, instantly slicing the air with a sharp whistling sound. The beast shudders, steps back a step, and freezes in shock, staring at its own hand. It was cleanly cut off at the wrist. A dark viscous liquid oozes from the wound site until the full reality of the injury finally sinks in. Disgust blooms in the creature as it looks at the boiling, rotting flesh of the severed limb, growling in helplessness because the rot spreads right before its eyes. Driven by primal rage, the beast lunges forward sharply, ignoring the pain to strike back at its tormentor. He suddenly leapt forward, pushing himself with his last remaining strength into a desperate, thunderous strike at the tentacles creeping like a whip. The strike cleaved the air with shock waves, but the creature did not fully take its form. It remained liquid and swallowed the force of the attack with anxious ease. The beast's fierce, furious lunge threw it away. The move broke, and it, pushed back, heavily slammed onto the barren ground. Necrotic rot immediately began devouring the body, quickly spreading from the wound and turning fur and flesh into a putrid mass. He stood firm, swaying in place, breathing heavily, and his gigantic body trembled as he looked at the wizard, the one towering in the distance. His breathing came in ragged gasps, and his gaze was fixed on the flickering, sinister core of his opponent. Throwing out the last spark of magic, he scorched the stump on his arm. The air crackled, ringing with ozone and the stench of burning flesh. Metal fragments slapped the ground with a rhythmic clinking. It pained, but his determination to keep fighting was unbroken. He lunges forward. A giant figure dissolves in motion as soon as he tries to close the distance, but the sorcerer's tentacles lash out with deadly precision, intercepting his path. The beast finds its leg trapped in darkness. The tendrils coil and wrap around it, tugging and throwing it off balance, while the sorcerer looms in the shadow. A sudden, brutal jerk, and the creature is dragged across the ground strewn with debris. The sorcerer clamps onto its many limbs, like a rope thrown and tightened. He strikes with a magical seal, and the energy safely disperses against the sorcerer's defense. Growing despair overwhelms him. These attacks are futile. Desperation forces him to act, and he reaches for the hidden weapon, gripping the cold, sharp steel of a specialized blade with his fingers. With a roar of defiance, he channels all his remaining strength into one, maximally focused strike, driving the weapon down to cut through the encroaching darkness. The blade sinks deeply into the sorcerer's tentacle. The blow sends a shockwave through the limb, as the creature watches the dark appendage begin to tear. The strike proves decisive. It shatters the sorcerer's spells, while he merely stands triumphantly, clutching the legendary dagger Mercilius family, a relic forged in the crucible of life and death. He firmly grasps the hilt of the dagger, Calden, a weapon whispered to grant its owner immunity to poisons and cleanse debilitating ailments. As soon as the blade flared, it was covered with sacred markings, the dagger, as if preparing for the confrontation that awaited ahead. The sorcery itself was dark. Serpentine delicate strands shot upward and twisted through the air with lethal intent. He surged forward. His movements remained smooth and precise as he made his way through the shadows, closing in from all sides. A cruel smile spread across his face, baring sharp teeth, as he prepared to strike back at the writhing ball of magic. With a sprinter's burst, he closed the distance, and the ground cracked beneath his footsteps. A guttural growl escaped, and his massive fist suddenly shot forward to clash with the sorcerer's defense. The blow was deafening. A thunderous roar shattered the waves of air pressure, and the sorcerer staggered, frozen in confused disbelief. He struggles against the shackles that tighten with every moment. The giant body tenses, and dark, parasitic tentacles bite even harder, wrenching a painful wheeze from his throat. The relentless squeezing continues. He feels himself pulled ever deeper into the abyss, as shadows clutch around his limbs with suffocating persistence. Watching this from afar, you suddenly realize the situation is rapidly deteriorating. At this pace, the ever-approaching darkness is about to swallow everything in its path. When the tentacles shift and turn away, he sees the dagger fall to the ground and ring from the impact, and his hope for a quick escape fades. Not succumbing to despair, he forcibly regains clarity of thought, feverishly searching for a strategy to break free from this trap. His gaze is fixed on the discarded weapon, the only point of focus amid the chaos, as he prepares to make a final, desperate dash. Several metal canisters are scattered across the bare, dusted earth. Their purpose is unknown, yet their very presence is unsettling. A beast driven by primal instinct lunges forward. Its gigantic body tears through the air as it shortens the distance. It strikes with incredible force. Its appendages twitch wildly, striving to smash everything in its path. The blow is deafening. The sharp collision sends shockwaves to the nearby surroundings. A giant skeletal maw crashes into the ground, creating a crater. It roars and flies forward relentlessly until it slams directly into the soil. From the center of this chaos emerges a dark spherical entity. Its tentacles lash out, spreading outward and striking everything around. Dust settles, and from beneath it emerge the remnants of the clash, scattered across the broken earth and bones. Among the ruins stands only one exquisite device releasing steam and seemingly dozing, buried in dust. The beast shudders as a dazzling, pulsating ball of energy flares from inside the crater, and the tentacles strike forward like whips. It hits with a massive fist, trying to crush the source of light, but the energy tears back at the same moment, burning its hand, scorching the flesh. The tentacles tightly wrap around the creature's arm, so tightly that the crack of bones slices through the silence and echoes in the air as it presses with incredible force. Breaking free in the struggle against the binding force, the monster roars, its eyes burning with primal fury as it tries to break free from the relentlessly closing tentacles. With a muffled roar of agony, the creature fades as the tentacles pierce its body. Blood sprays in splashes, and its strength is mercilessly drained. With the flash of the last desperate surge, she drives another fist into the ground, and the shockwave splits the surrounding stone. The beast is still trapped, its face twisted in a mask of defiance, and dark metal tentacles continue to cling and wrap around its limbs again. Slowly, the tentacles withdrew into the smoke, leaving behind only a trembling, persistent smell of ozone and silence upon completion. It still looms over the scorched ground. Its gigantic body twitches as the last remnants of the entity's energy dissipate into the air. One lonely, jagged weapon lies thrown in the dust, the only physical trace left of the enemy who vanished. He gasps for air, his lungs burn, and he falls even lower into the debris of the battlefield. Comprehension presses on him with crushing weight. Without incredible strength, reinforced by accumulated artifacts, he would have long perished. Nearby, scattered remnants of equipment begin to glow quietly and rhythmically responding to the magical residue still hanging in the air. He freezes before the pile of broken gear. The scale of destruction speaks for itself, as if testimony to how fierce the battle was. In his gaze, restrained reverence flares and fades along with his thoughts. He calculates the stubbornness of the opponents and does not hide his amazement at how these seemingly insignificant beings managed to reach such heights. He extends his mangled hand toward the weapon, deciding in advance. If the path ahead demands such strength, he will face it head-on. He stubbornly raises his eyes upward, in them a fierce resolve, newly born, confidently declaring that he is still capable of becoming stronger. His gaze narrows as he aims at only one target, to make himself more enduring and stronger than ever before. With a powerful surge of energy, he clenches his fist, and the air around trembles from the sheer intensity of his will. After an hour, the heavy pounding of his hooves echoes through the stone corridors of Exiled and the labyrinth as he descends to the first floor. He freezes and stares into the dazzling light at the end of the flight, feeling, this is the mark of the place he once sought to reach, the one that challenged him. The question does not let go of him as he approaches the glow. Could the answer to his eternal quest really be hidden beyond the boundary? He takes a step forward, and his silhouette disappears into the blinding glow of the exit, which seems to devour everything around. Climbing out from the depths, he finds himself under the open sky stretched to the very edge. Now he stands before the bustling city and does not know that ahead lies an even more dangerous clash, with enemies far more terrifying than those present now. Throughout the day, the town lives its own rhythm. Merchants and travelers mingle on the narrow market streets, and the crowd buzzes incessantly. Nearby, usual joys continue. An elderly man busies himself tending his stall, and children run and play carefree on the avenue, unaware of the looming threat. In the silence by the wall, a mother presses a sleeping infant to her chest, a moment of tender calm amid the daily hustle. Deep beneath the surface, a beast lies with eyes closed, freezing in that moment of silence before the inevitable. Shoulders and muscles twitch, the creature rises, and heavy steps echo dully against the stone walls as it heads toward the light of the exit. An insatiable thirst for power drives the transformation, and the creature turns into an unparalleled monster. In the depths of the labyrinth Exiled, on the first floor, the beast's scenarios were focused on only one thing: the path ahead. It steps forward, pondering whether the light at the end of the corridor truly holds the prize it chases. The giant monster looms over the small, lonely figure, and its shadow seems to swallow the distance between them. The figure stands like a fortress, clutching a short blade with trembling hands, and its breath comes in ragged, heavy gasps. The beast freezes in place, puzzled by the sight of the trembling, weak creature that dared to challenge it. Suddenly, it lunges forward and it attacks, while the monster begins mocking its futility, claiming it won't even scratch its hide. He stubbornly looks back with burning, unyielding eyes, refusing to fear the colossal power standing before him. The gaze of the small traveler sharply widens. It holds a single, desperate focus, and he bursts forward. He drives the blade into the beast with a primal roar, and the force of the strike sends a shockwave through the air. The monster staggers, stunned by the sudden, precise strike that nevertheless pierced its skin. Despite the successful hit, the course of the fight topples him. He breaks and falls, lying on the stone floor, while the giant creature looms over him, breathing heavily. After the outbreak of violence, he falls into a deep, unconscious sleep, breathing steady, though wounds cover his entire body. The beast examines him, puzzled by the sight. The opponent sleeps soundly right in the middle of the fight, where one mistake means death. He contemplates the nature of his prey. Creatures with such weakness usually flee, but this one decided to stand and fight. The monster inspects the wound on his own flesh, and freezes, unable to comprehend how a slow, crude weapon could have caused him any harm at all. Understanding comes to the beast as soon as he looks at the fallen youth. He recognizes in him a familiar, stubborn spirit, and because of this cannot piece together what exactly happened. He gazes at the fallen youth and catches in those wide-open, defiantly rebellious eyes the same fierce spirits call the desire to find his own past. The beast slowly and attentively looks at the unconscious traveler and concludes, this tiny, crippled figure is a reflection of the man he once was. He sees that the boy neither knows nor has proper weapons, but understands. The steel of battle will still temper him and turn him into much more. Slowly and heavily, but with purposeful confidence, he kneels before the boy. his gigantic figure casts a long shadow over the small, motionless body. He whispers a silent command into the air, urging the boy to become strong and overcome his current fragility. The gleam of the future flickers in his thoughts, a promise of growth that goes beyond this encounter. A predatory snarl stretches across his face as soon as he imagines the day when this boy will return a worthy opponent and challenge him. The boy is still lost in a dream. He does not realize that the monster has already marked him, so that one day he will stand among the greatest warriors. He stood on the threshold, and determination hardened as he swore he would become stronger by their next meeting. The beast's eyes narrowed, a silent predatory focus fixed on the road ahead. Beyond the wild wilderness appeared the stone stairs of Sazard and Labyrinth, and it was like a signal for the arrival of a new company. The group disembarked, and the leader immediately gave orders. Methodically sweep the lower floors to find the seal magician and the missing artifact. He ordered the young prince to stay behind so as to protect him while the rest prepared to descend. While the companions were conversing, they were suddenly struck by a revelation. The guide was once a high-ranking adventurer. He stopped, remembered, and admitted everything. He once lived only for power, to repay the blessings of his clan. When forced to tell even more, he fell into thoughtful silence and chose to remain silent, burying the deeper secrets of his own past. The bearded warrior stood before the entrance and did not take his eyes off the road ahead while his comrades caught up behind. He watched as a small figure emerged from the darkness, beaten, exhausted, and clutching a mysterious object in his hand, took a step forward. Sudden news rippled through the group. They began to doubt why a child was in such a dangerous place, all eyes fixed on the artifact she held. A metal object with ancient engraved signs gleamed in the light, and to those who knew the secrets of the labyrinth, it immediately became clear its true value was too high. The sudden appearance of the boy interrupted the party halfway. Everyone stepped closer and surrounded the youth to quickly assess the situation. Bearded warriors stepped forward and loomed over the child as soon as he introduced himself as Panya Laban and demanded to know the boy's name. He raised his gaze, met the giant's eyes steady, without trembling, and simply said that his name was Panzel. Anxiety hung in the air. Their group was interrogating him about the origin of the armband, but suddenly they were surprised the boy was not afraid, even though a formidable veteran adventurer stood nearby. Without changing his tone, he calmly and firmly explained his presence. 3 days ago, he sneaked onto the first floor of the labyrinth because he urgently needed to earn copper coins for his dying mother, and he persisted in his intention to push through to success. The elder explains, amateurs can still hold out on the first floor, but spiny rats are a deadly threat to those who lack focus. They attack in packs and gnaw the terrified to death. He continues, emphasizing, the boy's 3 days of exhausting survival is not a stroke of luck. It is the disciplined hostility of a person accustomed to surviving adventures. The boy shares his own experience, how he killed 2 spiny rats, collected their copper coins, and then came across something else. He describes the creature that appeared, a huge, muscular beast covered in fur, with horns like a cow's. When he asks if it was a minotaur, the elder's face twists in pure shock and distrust grows on it. The elder quickly regains composure and asks to immediately return to the guild to confirm the situation. He presses the boy, forcing him to continue the story and explain what happened after he encountered the beast. The boy admits, fearing for his life, he prepared a knife and, unable to hold back, suddenly jumped at the minotaur. He confirmed that after the clash, he really lost consciousness. His small stature only allowed him to reach the beast's leg, and he fainted. Continuing the story, the boy described how he woke up and saw. The monster was gone, only his knife remained, along with a mysterious, valuable-looking armband on the sleeve, which he still kept. The priestess froze in thought, noting, the minotaur left the items deliberately, but why exactly remained a mystery. The elder acknowledged the tradition. The labyrinth's spoils belonged to the one who found them, yet cautiously asked if the young man would agree to give up the artifact. He explained that the armband is a respected family relic that belonged to his father, and hoped to touch the boy's heart with empathy. Then the elder offered a fair price for the item, and holding his breath, waited to see how the boy would react to the offer. She silently nodded when he asked for confirmation. His gaze searched her eyes to be sure of the truthfulness of the words about his father's inheritance. He looked down at the metal clasp and said that money did not interest him. He would return the relic to its rightful place. He did not betray his decision. He brushed off their protests about the reward with a simple, resolute dismissal. His face softened as he explained, it is a tragedy that the beloved thing of his father would eventually end up in the hands of strangers. The elder looked at him with new respect, silently acknowledging the youth's nobility. A bright, grateful smile, and the noble introduced himself, Julius. He sincerely thanked for the selfless act. He quietly and modestly nodded in response, and his restrained behavior did not change even from the praise. The elder again stumbled upon the nearest riddle. They guessed aloud where that formidable beast had gone. Meanwhile, the burly warrior broke into a run through the dense forest. His breath was tearing, bursting from his chest in desperate and broken gasps. He roared madly with anger and demanded to know if his partner was trying to force him into an early assessment. Wiping his forehead, he laughed and waved his hand, brushing off the near mishap, then began teasing his companion for reckless fire, magic the kind that almost burned him. The tension only grew when they realized they were surrounded, but he was not at all embarrassed, stubbornly insisting that their unity would get them through this danger. They quickly raced through the streets. The group of adventurers confidently paved the way forward, focused and determined. Later the mood lifted, so they gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter, and for a moment the heaviness of their journey receded. A playful competition flared up. The group agreed that whoever lost in arm wrestling would pay for everyone's drinks. While the jesting continued, a deeper reflection emerged in the silence. The gaze of the monsters they hunted revealed these were real monsters, humans. The bearded warrior gasped hoarsely, his face twisted with exhaustion and growing rage as he struggled to keep pace. He laughed sharply, mockingly, ridiculing the naivety of his companion. The laughter broke off in contempt for their idealism. He watched as the woman reached out her hand. Her face was mocking, and she, questioning his lack of human company, deliberately addressed him as Logan. Weary and exhausted, he stood before the entrance to the Adventurers' Guild, the burden of fatigue revealed by his heavy, ragged breaths during the effort. His eyes, marked by the lines of a long and hard life, reflected a deep, enduring sadness as he stared intently into the distance. In the quiet room lay a single untouched flower, a silent reminder of the name he had just heard, whispered softly. In the darkness, in the thickest shadows, massive, curved horns of a monster loomed so clearly marked was its presence in the gloom. The creature froze and stared at the dazzling light pouring from the labyrinth's exit, as if pondering the world that awaited beyond the stone walls. Blocking the path so stood the small traveler, back motionless, posture firm and defiant, as if guarding something valuable hidden within sight. Then he realized the space beyond the exit was not a battlefield, but a sanctuary in need of protection. He focused on the main point. The higher he climbed, the weaker his opponents became, and only guessing remained as to where his true trial lay. His gaze narrowed, he stared intently at the path ahead. A new resolve was already hardening inside him, like stone. Stone steps stretched down into the suffocating darkness, a silent call straight into the very depths. Suddenly he was enlightened. The battle he longed for was not somewhere above. It was somewhere underground, waiting in the very abyss. He stood before the formidable guardian of the lower levels, his muscles tensed like a spring ready to strike. He was certain the highest test of his strength awaited him below. From his throat burst a primal, deafening roar. It rolled through the cold stone corridors of the 30th floor as he proclaimed his dominion. With a sharp swing of huge axes, he cleaved the air, and at that moment his fury erupted in a whirlwind of destruction. Even when the immediate threat faded, the beast plunged into the darkness, doomed, as if to become a force of even greater power. Victory over the floor boss, starting from the 11th level and beyond, opens the traveler's access to rare, coveted items. These unique gifts, known as drop skills, unlock special advantages from magic absorption to enhance perception and help travelers surpass their own limits. The lair of the strange monster that fell into the very depths was no exception to this rule. After the fall of the 50th floor, the boss, a lizardman, crashed to the ground, leaving behind a rare scimitar with fresh blood and a warrior's defensive skill. After him was defeated a bighorn bear from the 55th floor, and it passed the skill charge to the victor. Simultaneously, in the clash, the loot included a rare bastard sword and various potions squeezed out after the fight with the adventure party. The slaughter did not stop. The red mantis from the 60th floor surrendered, giving up a rare sickle sword, and on the 62nd floor behind was left a spirit with his skill scorching breath. Although his level did not change, the relentless cycle of battles and gaining these powers forced the Minotaur to continuously and sharply increase his strength. He clings in the shadows, and his thoughts are cut and devoured by the primal hunting cycle: robbery, attack, devouring, murder. A moment after the silent-winged thousand-eyed ghost was defeated, silence in the devilish room of the boss on the 62nd floor heavily falls on the labyrinth. The armored knight prepares for the clash. The rhythmic clinking of armored gauntlets echoes off the stone floor as he tightens his gear. He firmly grips his shield, the polished surface flickers in the dim light as he steals determination for himself. The beast secretly watches the strangers and coldly, calculatingly notes their cleverness in how precisely they read his non-aggression pact seems truthful. Shulkvul Kurganos, an experienced Class A knight, leads the squad, his gaze fixed on the target lying ahead. A disguised woman speaks and directly confirms. It is she, the entity responsible for the death of Lord Percival, and she stands before them, which triggers the response of Carden's dagger. He clenches his jaws, the revelation weighs on him, and at that moment he understands he cannot simply accept what happened. She stood motionless, gave the order to her subordinates to retreat, and prioritized the safety of the scout and mage even despite the furious urge to engage in battle with the high-level threat herself. With a heavy muffled blow, she pressed her huge steel into the dungeon floor, and that blow formed an impenetrable barrier. They froze in tense silence, holding their breath while the beast prepared to unleash its fury upon them. From the depths, a deafening battle cry burst forth from the creature. The traditional prayer of Kurgano was meant to frighten enemies and at the same time encourage the beast itself. The air seemed to press down like a stone when the Minotaur let out a roaring howlous skill that broke physical strength and bound movements with overpowering pumped-up power. He lunged forward, but she raised her defense, relying solely on her own Kurigido, withstand the blow without the help of potions. The strike shook the very foundations of the room, but her shield held indeed. It withstood the devastating force of the attack. When the echo of the clashing blade faded, the beast roared in furious rage. Could not move him an inch, while he stood immovable, unshaken even before the storm of blows. She stood firm, clearly holding her equipment, Vandessa's shield. This was no trifling masterpiece, forged by the legendary mage Arkal Vandessa, who poured his own soul into its creation to establish the pinnacle of defensive technology. The Kurganos clan passed this relic down through generations, relying on its incredible weight and thickness to withstand attacks from demonic beasts and protect their lands. With her shield raised, she freezes in stance, intercepts the blow, and the Minotaur's axe rushes past her with bone-crushing force. The metal rings out with a deafening roar, but she does not yield an inch of ground. She grips the handle until it hurts her boots dig into the earth to stop the beast's advance. Suddenly she sharply thrusts the weapon forward and, cutting frantically, drives it into the Minotaur's skin. The beast shudders from shock, and meanwhile she does not lessen the pressure, and thanks to incredible defensive skill and precise counterattacks, she turns the tide of the battle. She felt the beast's large hand squeezing her shield. The very strength of the grip threatened to break the defense. All this was seen from the side, so the spectators immediately screamed in panic when the Minotaur confidently grabbed her and rushed toward the heavy equipment with primal fury. Despite their panic, she growled hoarsely from tension, pressed the shield forward with all her might, broke the grip, and regained her footing. With firm stomping, she rooted her step, tightly gripped the hilt, and with all her strength struck the shield into the Minotaur. The roar of the blow pierced the air, and the beast staggered, retreating. The knight slides across the stone floor, and the shield absorbs every blow while the beast roars in fierce helplessness. The observers froze in admiration and continuously recorded. The martial art of the Kurganos clan was forged right in the skirmishes on the surface, and it went far beyond the usual standards of labyrinth levels or classes. He stands like a fortified support, watching intently as the massive creature slowly rises to full height, and her gaze is fixed firmly on his armored figure. The beast acknowledges its own power. It says that its physical strength and fighting spirit equal those of monsters found on the deepest floors. His eyes narrow, a predatory focus flashes in his gaze, and it becomes clear, the real trial has just begun. He reflects on the nature of battle. Humans are naturally vulnerable, yet they can break beyond their limits through tactics and skill, and become true warriors who can overcome even the fiercest giant ogres. Taking a steady breath, he loudly states his goal. He has come to challenge the Minotaur to prove that his mentor, Percival, could not be defeated by some pathetic monster. Behind the visor, his gaze finally finds a firm answer. The rumors about the Mentor's defeat are complete lies. He does not move from his place while a huge beast looms over him, and its roar thunders as if the labyrinth itself is trembling. The knight deflects the deadly blow with his shield. Steel rings against steel, and he prepares to finish the fight up close, hand to hand. He carefully watches as a small cylindrical object rolls across the floor, and his grip tightens along with the anticipation of what is about to happen. Suddenly, the object explodes right against his armor. The impact scatters sparks in all directions, and he does not even think of retreating. He instantly reads the attack and is confident. His armored defenses will withstand even such explosive force. Before he can recover, a curved sharp blade hooks the edge of his shield with a sudden jerkhan, strikes with sudden, furious power. He recognizes the weapon a rare drop from Crimson Mantis. The realization briefly disrupts his train of thought while the enemy is already winding up the strike. With a powerful jerk, the attacker rips the shield from his hands, exposing him and leaving him defenseless. He struggled to stay on his feet as a barrage of explosive hits struck his armor, forcing him to growl through the pain. The beast lunged forward, and its claws dug into the shield with a wild, merciless grip. With bloody suddenness, the creature snatched the shield from him and tore it from his hands, exposing and leaving him open. He froze in shock as the shield was thrown away, but quickly recovered. He swung the blade in a desperate counterattack, and the blade sang across the monster's skin. The force of the collision twisted his weapon, and he staggered back as the Minotaur delivered a devastating blow to his abdomen. Despite the brutal attack, he was still on his feet. His armor, forged from molten dragon scales, absorbed the worst of the blow. The beast took a deep breath, preparing for a devastating howl, and the spectators screamed in horror, sensing the inevitable threat. He clenched the broken blade and gathered his courage to survive the attack and manage to deliver one last, decisive strike. He froze in tense anticipation as the monster lunged forward and released a deafening, scorching roar at full force. The wave tore at his resolve as if it would shatter it completely. Retreating backward, he gasped in disbelief. This creature had not only raw strength, it also possessed scorching breath, a skill he had not expected at all. A cold realization overwhelmed him. The monster could steal abilities and skills, robbing them from its very slain victims. The blow threw him back, and nearby someone screamed sharply in alarm, watching in horror as the night was squeezed to its limit. He was pressed into the ground. The earth cracked beneath him as the Minotaur continued its relentless assault. A rhythmic metallic clanging, and the beast began hammering at his defense, each strike echoing with the clang of inevitable doom. The truth became indisputable. The same force that once glorified the life of Sir Percival now pressed upon him. He aimed his gaze at the shield. It was already battered and cracking under the pressure, and realized before him was not just a monster, but a predator that had evolved by tearing out and stealing the power of heroes. Fear grows. The creature before him is not a trickster of monsters, but an imitator of martial skill, capable of absorbing the very abilities of those it kills. The beast roars so loudly it rings in the ears, primal and loud, and the foundations of the labyrinth crack from the thunder. With a disgusting crunch, the Minotaur topples down with its full mass, smashing the opponent's defense, a demonstration of undeniable power. Nearby, comrades watch in horror as the leader is overwhelmed by the force. One shouts in despair, begging for forgiveness, while another desperately urges the group, run before everyone ends up the same way. Clenching his teeth in agony at what is happening, the soldier fights the order to leave the post and understands. First and foremost, he must save the safety of the seal magician and the scout. The beast freezes, its eyes squint, and a faint, eerie glow begins to emerge from its body, a sign that the stolen technique has been activated. Among the ruins of broken shields and discarded iron, the monster towers over the battlefield. Its presence radiates a terrifying, new power. Its gaze slides coldly and holds the next target. A calculated, predatory intent has already latched onto the victim. Under the weight of the creature's impending strike, the ground trembles, and the stolen shield hums with deadly, vibrating energy. The beast stands in the trembling light in the boss room on the 63rd floor, and its presence cuts through the space like a cold, precise threat. He surveys the chamber and immediately notices. The adventurers from the 62nd floor have retreated, so the corridor is clear for the next encounter. Overcoming the temptation of material trophies, the creature focuses only on one goal. It knows rumors that it supposedly has stolen items of the guild president. From the darkness emerges a new threat. Exiled is a level 60 mage, a class status, and he carries a heavy burden. He is the father of a former enemy. A young woman stands amid swirling papers in the air, her face frozen in deep shock and complete distrust. She bursts into a cry of despair and shouts why she is not noticed. Nearby, a man disdainfully brushes off the highest ratings of Magic Academy as if they mean nothing. He grips a specialized device, his gaze cold and focused. The group synchronously completes the final preparations. They give a speed buff to Sarmath, and Agaz prepares to cast defense reinforcement and health regeneration. Nearby is the threshold of the level 63 boss, and the air is cut by the feeling that the beast is very close. Holding his weapon motionless with a firm grip, he confirms, all preparations are finished, and adds that their team consists only of experienced class adventurers. He sharply pulls his gaze forward with grim determination. His breath falters as he delivers the verdict. The time to kill the beast has finally come. The hardened killer sharpens his blades, his gaze fixed on the monster as he gathers a strike with the cold precision of revenge. They burst through stone corridors, their steps echoing in a balanced rhythm until the pace quickens and the distance melts with every moment before their prey. The beast's jaws cut through the air it lunged forward with a roar, but the travelers are already in place. Its fury meets fury in return, with a powerful, coordinated counterattack. He does not lose focus as the giant beast's axe crashes into his protective barrier, the impact echoing throughout the chamber. Allies freeze in amazement. The monster is thrown back, and he slides, vainly trying to hold his ground. Only the power of magical protection stops his momentum. With a sharp command, he unleashes a freezing spell and torn eyes flare up and immediately pin the creature in place, binding its limbs. The beast twitches in icy shackles. Its enormous body is shackled in frost, and the magical chains of the titans embrace the skin, holding it tight. Gaining strength under pressure, the monster tries to break out, but the magical ice holds firm. It cracks, compresses, and groans from the fierce tension. Staring intently at the display, his companion notes, such a level of magic usually requires prolonged chance, but he bypassed this having prepared circles in advance, a testament to his skill. The strategist acknowledges his power, calling him an expert in high-speed magic and the key to their current blockade. She signals the next phase of the attack, calling him to strike while the beast is still immobilized. He directs his power into a divine spell, summoning a hail of burning rays that crash down on the trapped monster, forcing it to endure the full weight of the sentence. He does not release concentration, while the magical construct encasing the beast begins to strengthen. The spells press with weight, and rhythmic, heavy blows mark each step of the curse. Sensing the inevitable surge of power, the priestess shouts a warning to her comrades and urges them to hide before the place is engulfed in flames. With a grim, final command, he unleashes himself into grand magic, his eyes burning with the intent to erase the target into nothingness. The very air roars with the sentence of agony. A convulsive wave of raw energy pushes forward, straight toward the trapped monster. Under relentless pressure, the prison ice cracks fissures spread lightning fast, and the entire construct shatters into 1,000 fragments. At the center of the battlefield, a titanic flash of light and power bursts forth. A wave sweeps the ground, forcing the adventurers to brace against the shock. When the dust begins to settle, the party gazes at the direct hit. Cautious optimism rises in their chests, for they finally understand their combined strike work. He looks at the aftermath with a grim expression, and in his inner thoughts a deeply rooted contempt for the creature he just dismantled. He remembered her last wish, a simple dream of a quiet life, far from the violence of the battlefield. With a heavy heart, he whispered a promise in her memory, declaring that her revenge was finally secured. Beneath them, the earth began to tremble wildly. Even the earth itself had to react to the consequences of the massive magical discharge. Nearby, the travelers exchanged grim remarks, arguing over which trophies they would claim in battle, while simultaneously acknowledging the master would finally have a chance to break free from the ice of anxiety and find peace. The trembling grew, a dull rhythmic rumble suggested in the dissipating smoke. Someone or something was still stirring, breathing, waiting for the moment. In the misty haze emerged a huge carved shield. It stood unwavering against the destruction that was supposed to erase everything in its path. Behind the impenetrable barrier, eyes flared primal rage without any embellishment. The beast was still alive, lunging into attack and growling, refusing to retreat. Shock gripped the entire group when they realized their mightiest strike had no effect, and now they froze in pure helplessness, unable to understand how the monster could survive. The mage user watches intently as the battlefield bursts into a dazzling flash of light, and the incredible force of the strike shatters the defense of his allies. He sees the beast charge forward with a deafening roar, and its gigantic form falls upon the warriors relentlessly with merciless, crushing blows. The monster swings a heavy axe with terrible speed, forcing the armored knight to brace for the blow as the ground beneath them shakes. Under immense pressure, the knight's shield spins in the air, and for a moment it remains open to the monster's furious rage. In a desperate attempt to survive, the warrior tries to push through the chaos, but the beast anticipates the move, driving the weapon into the ground with all its might, and the crash shakes the body violently. As everything spirals into despair, the mage user strains his throat with commands to his comrades, demanding, pour every ounce of strength into the last desperate protective barrier. The monster continues to press forward relentlessly, heavy steps thunder like thunder, until it prepares to deliver the final blow. They hold firm, weaving magic into one to build the Great Wall, a shimmering dome of energy that ripples under the beast's assault. He stood at the focus and ignored the mockery. Physical blows were worthless against the radiant Great Wall barrier. With a sharp, furious exhale, the beast shattered the silence and unleashed a stream of energy. It struck directly at the protective dome. The blow tore through the air, and the defenders fell as their protective armor crumbled to dust. In the ruins, he dragged his broken body across the cold floor, while the weapon clattered and rolled away uselessly as the monster rose in the distance. He exhaled gas for air, and steam rose from his exhausted body as the creature watched him with predatory patience. His fingers scratched the stone abruptly, step by step searching for a grip as he tried to get up again. Clenching his teeth, he stared ahead into the gaze of pure, unwavering defiance. The beast took a deep breath. He already saw his victory, while the lonely figure retreated into the darkness of the corridor. He stood among the ruins and calculated the fight intently. If everything went as usual, he would have fallen as soon as he stepped over the threshold of this room, but the trap, perfectly arranged, along with the devastating blow, secured the triumph. The beast suddenly realized the main thing. The heavy shield in his opponent's hands was the true key to victory, and it was what determined how everything would end. His face was distorted by a greedy smile. He was already contemplating the trophy he had just obtained. He thought if he did not take something truly valuable, then all his efforts would be in vain. The monster loomed over the fallen mage. His gigantic body cast a dark shadow around, frightening on the dim-tiled floor. The mage user struggled against an invisible force, and his own voice broke with tension as soon as he realized. His body was completely paralyzed, not an inch could be moved. With cold concentration, he watched as the prey, desperately struggling, crawled away, and every rustle echoed throughout the entire room. With heavy, deliberate steps, he closed the distance, fixing his gaze on the frightened mage, who already understood too late there was no escape from inevitable death. He lowered his huge axe, and with a thunderous crash, shattered the ground where his opponent stood. The beast froze, heavy breathing echoed in the ruin as he pulled an ornate shield from among the debris, and his gaze stuck to its glowing surface. A strange awareness overwhelmed him. He recalled a surge of atypical rage that flared up just as the newcomer reached for the artifact, and now he was left in complete astonishment at his own reaction. His gaze narrowed as he stared at the intricate patterns engraved on the metal, trying to find the source of the power that stirred such deeply rooted feelings within him. He stood upright, feeling the weight of the shield in his hand. This was how he stayed grounded while trying to comprehend that sudden, unfamiliar, and burning anxiety that gripped his very heart. His teeth clenched and ground against each other. A low, guttural rumble hummed through his jaw as he strained to understand these sudden vulnerabilities. The fragmentation intensified, his resolve strengthened, and he pushed away the turmoil and confusion to focus entirely on the object of his obsession. With the final, decisive movement, he slammed the shield back into the ground. The impact unleashed a wave of energy that rippled throughout the entire hall. He strikes the ground relentlessly. The metallic ringing echoes through the hall as he interrogates his own identity. His thoughts are drawn again to the shield. He wonders whether it truly adds strength or merely provides a deceptive sense of security, pondering the nature of the sword in his hand. A sudden thought overwhelms him. Relying on such tools means living in constant fear of losing them, and he is already beginning to reject this empty existence. Sharp and without hesitation, he throws the weapon away. The clink of its fall on the floor draws a bold line between him and dependence. The blade traces a circle above the stone and freezes exactly where it landed, light, as if nothing weighs it down. He rejects the coward's path. His gaze hardens as he tears off the crutches of external armaments. He concludes that hiding behind a tree is just an excuse, and true strength is born in the ability to withstand any attack without fragile barriers. Clenching his fist, he chooses a new path to pursue his own absolute power. With all his might, he struck the stone floor with his fist, and the ground beneath him cracked, shattering into fragments. The blow sent shock waves through the labyrinth and across the tiles, and the knuckles on his fingers whitened from the strain and power tearing him from within. Clenching his teeth, he restrains despair and transforms it into a single burning goal. He rises to his full height, and his gigantic figure casts a shadow over the ruins he has just created himself. One single thought consumes him. He must descend even deeper into the abyss. His gaze flashes with primal greed as he swears to find stronger opponents and deadlier clashes. Without looking back at the debris, he strides forward decisively, leaving behind the shattered floor, and bursts into unknown depths. Several months past, the deep, quiet corridors of the labyrinth did not move from their place, as if frozen, and only time passed. Where the depths go deeper, on the 100th level, on the lowest floor, hellish heat blazed a sign of the boss's domain, the boss chamber. The king of the labyrinth emerged, a force of nature that trampled everything in its path like a fire, leaving only conquest behind. He let out a deafening roar, and his gigantic figure lunged forward with wild, untamed force, as if about to unleash all his fury. The beast's jaw opened relentlessly. A primal sound tore through the stone halls as he asserted his dominance over the depths. Far from the underground chaos, the capital Ledophilis towered within the kingdom of Bardmost, and it seemed unaware of the looming threat. On the estate grounds of the ruling family in Merculius, discipline and order prevailed, a sharp contrast to the wild abyss below. Two young cadets honed their fencing with utmost concentration, movements sharp, precise, synchronized, as they prepared for the trials ahead. He puts the final point in the training session, signaling that the day of exhausting exercises for the young traveler has ended. Watching from afar, the elder notices. His appearance became a comfort for the boy and helped soothe the young lord's lingering sorrow. The conversation then shifts to what the boy is capable of. The elder says he wants to raise him as a loyal vassal for Lord Julius, emphasizing his impressive skill in swordsmanship. For a moment, curiosity flashes across the warrior's face as he questioned the elders. A sudden and painfully sharp interest in you awakened within him. The boy, unaware of the watchful gaze, reflects on the instructions he received and admits the path he first stepped onto was shown to him by the knight himself. As the conversation continues, it increasingly delves into darker matters. The official report of the knight's death has already been approved, and the public version was fabricated to blame everything on illness. They agreed on one thing: despite how far rumors can spread, the transfer of power to Lord Julius will proceed smoothly under protection from any interference by other noble houses. The elder tightens the silence with his gaze and sharply asks whether the warrior will still hesitate when the time comes to carry out the dangerous order to kill the Minotaur. The warrior steps forward before the assembly, holding the royal decree, which bypasses the guild's authority and grants her the right to demand the submission of the beast responsible for the death of Master Jilinx. The warrior questions what reward awaits him, but the companion dismisses material gain, saying the true weight of the request is measured by the consequences that will follow the confirmation of the master's death. He froze with a grim expression, insisting that the stakes were too high for such a figure of great importance to be merely a target for Monster Hot. Suspicion darkened in his eyes as he weighed the king's true motives, and a bitter thought formed in his mind. The hunt for the Minotaur is just a pretext to get to the truth about the master's safety. He turned to the guild president and asked him to listen carefully, preparing to reveal a story, one that seemed more like a fable than the cold truth of the kingdom. It all began with the royal family. The queen and her daughter were thrown into the depths of the palace to hide them from the shifting currents of court politics. Then he explained how the current king inherited from his father a secret affection for the princess. Despite a public mask of disdain, he behaved as if protecting her. The revelation reached its peak when he spoke of a miraculous meeting and how the king fell in love with his own half-sister, leaving the listener stunned by the burden of that secret. He sat silently, digesting what he had heard. The king was deeply shocked upon learning who exactly his lover was, a young aristocrat whose courage and refinement had earned the monarch's complete trust. The monarch's heart swelled with joy when the young man, unaware of the true nature of his beloved's connection to the crown, knelt before him and humbly asked for her hand in marriage. Seeking to hide his own feelings, he kept the couple as far from the royal family as possible. Even when they greeted his son Julius, he arranged a marriage for the mother under a different name to protect her from the truth. To protect the happiness of his beloved sister was the sole purpose that defined his existence. Because of this, the king, as soon as he learned that the monster had taken the life of his brother-in-law, launched a secret investigation, a tragedy that, without a doubt, also killed his sister. The loss left his sister a widow and her young son fatherless. This was exactly what the king desperately tried to prevent. The beast that took that life became the king's fiercest enemy. Unable to openly take revenge without revealing the nobleman's secrets, he issued a decree to hunt the monster under the guise of searching for the missing hero, and the death was officially recorded in documents as a common illness. He long weighed the harsh truth and admitted to himself, The colossal reward was not intended for the state, it was meant to fuel a single burning revenge. Casting a glance at his companion, he paused for a moment and, inquisitively glancing at the sudden appearance of the beast, demanded a clear statement of who the Minotaur really was. The other man closed his eyes, and a firm expression froze on his face. He only repeated the same uncertainty that weighed on his heart. He looked at the endless expanses and pondered. Some events go beyond human understanding, and from our limited perspective, the great design remains forever hidden. Holding his gaze firmly, he reached a conclusion as unshakable as a verdict. Under any circumstances, their only way forward was to give everything they had. The elder man slowly nodded, and in this gesture was read a grim sentence of agreement, as if the philosophy of endurance had finally won. Their conversation was interrupted by a very young traveler. Hesitating, he searched for words to request an audience with the nobleman. The boy stood before them, his eyes burning with curiosity, and without any detours asked about the main difference between the battle hammer and the sword. Then he explained, unlike the sword, the battle hammer relies not on refined technique, but on the devastating, raw strength of its wielder. The young traveler tilted his head and repeated what was said with doubt and the same curiosity in his voice, which even touched the warrior. A sharp, muffled crack of joints and the veteran challenged his companion, saying he would show the true power of the weapon. The youth's eyes flared with unguarded excitement. This fiery statement momentarily stunned the older man. Sighing with resigned submission, the warrior turned to the maid, who briefly reminded him, fulfilling the young lord's wish was his main duty. He looked at the boy, and a rare, firm smile spread across his face as he admitted he had long awaited the chance to test his strength against him. The boy beamed with a smile, his face filled with determined impatience before the upcoming trial. Only a little time passed. Within a few days, the stage for their meeting was ready. He stood among the gathered crowd of adventurers, their voices blending into a low, steady hum of anticipation. The entire hall seemed to focus on one point: the central bulletin board, where a new, grim prize had just been posted. It read, "A call to arms against the Minotaur, a unique threat lurking on the 62nd floor." It was marked as a Class A danger, with a reward reaching 15 million. They had just noticed the announcement when the seasoned fighters exchanged meaningful glances and grim smiles, and each immediately felt the trial would not be an easy one. Minute by minute, an oppressive silence fell over the group as the hunt began to become reality. The tension broke with a sharp metallic clang. A heavy axe strike rang against the ground. One after another, a spiked hammer and a heavy spear crashed down onto the floor with full force. It was a challenge without any compromises. A mountain of discarded and broken weaponry lay scattered around, a silent witness to the brutal trials, awaiting anyone who dared to challenge the king of the labyrinth. He stands in the very heart of the deep labyrinth's silence, and his massive blade thuds against the stone floor with a heavy, resonant thud. Suddenly and smoothly, he begins to swing the heavy steel. The air whistles as the blade cuts through the darkness. A moment of inertia pushes him forward. Powerful muscles ripple in waves as he executes a precise, sweeping arc strike. He accelerates the rotation, and the weapon blurs in a bloody circle, from start to finish with only deadly intent. The pace increases until he becomes a whirlwind of steel, and the power of training tears a vacuum from the stagnant air. He holds his breath heavily, contemplating the route to the lowest floor. Monsters no longer satisfy his thirst, only a certain type of prey can quench the burning thirst. His eyes narrow, and he fixes his gaze on the distant possibility of a worthy challenge. With gloomy certainty he understands, only among people will he find the strength he so desires to test, pushing the limits of his own body. He froze in the petrified thickness, and determination grew stronger with every moment. As soon as he realized, the opponent he sought was already waiting to be found. Beneath his feet the floor stirred and boiled. A rhythmic disturbance announced the emergence of new life from the depths of the labyrinth. Terrifying creatures surged forward like water from a spring. They emerged directly from the walls and floor, not born of flesh, but from the very essence of the prison dungeons. He watched as the cycle repeated again and again, and knew in advance, as soon as these beings are defeated, the labyrinth will inevitably give birth to them again over time. He froze on the lower floor, certain, if he waits here, eventually a mighty human warrior will burst out, the one he had seen. Driven by hunger for greater strength, he firmly knew he must perfect his skills and master the art of combat to finally achieve his goal. A bold smile spread across his face as he awaited that doomed moment greedily, without restraint, eager to taste the entire challenge to the limit. He shifted his gaze to the metal dragon before him and noted, After its 100th defeat, the creature will no longer resurrect, so this will be the end of his current training. He finally claimed the depths for himself. The stone walls seemed to truly acknowledge him as the new master of the labyrinth. 12 years have passed since the world last received a new creation. The landscape is still scarred, but life stubbornly clings to the shadow of the great labyrinth. In the city square, travelers gather, their eyes fixate on the task board. They have come for glory and ringing coins. Nearby hangs a large reward notice. It details the threat of the Minotaur, the formidable boss of the 100th floor. In the local armory, a young woman meets visitors and offers equipment to those who dare to look into the abyss. She recalls recent news, and the client is struck like by thunder when he learns that an entire group was completely wiped out. In the details, pure brutality. 72 people, including knights and healers, set out to tame the beast but vanished into the darkness. An observer reveals the harsh truth. The nobles organized these mass raids to exhaust the boss, sacrificing countless lives for prestige. A young traveler snorts disdainfully, unable to hide his disgust for the shameless who claim glory for conquering the metal dragon, even if among them is a young lord who merely watched from the side. He asks if they resorted again to the same treacherous tactics, only to fall into them and end their own. A veteran across the table confirmed his suspicions. The very first group that entered the boss room was wiped off the face of the earth by the creature's scorching breath. The confused youth squeezed out a question: why are they so poorly prepared? And wondered if they lacked the necessary protective magic. The veteran revealed the reason. Their equipment was specialized only against physical attacks, so under any unexpected anomalous conditions of the fight, they completely lost protection. He added, the slaughter happened just outside the boss room's door, while the commander calmly sat and prepared the next party's turn with a speech, without any fuss. The young traveler choked on his food from shock, finally realizing. The Minotaur broke out from beyond the boss's room and ambushed the squad exactly as the commander had planned. The veteran remained cold and brushed off the youth's protest. The strategy was too cruel, he said, but after 12 years, everyone should know what the monster is capable of, so it should get out of its lair. He continued the story even more sternly. As soon as the Minotaur dealt with the commander's second pair, it immediately headed for the nearest troop camp. This is a well-known fact if you are in the know. The terrifying tactical precision of the monster was overwhelming. It methodically wiped out teleporters and healers, and only then destroyed the barrier objects meant to hold back wandering monsters, letting in a whole pack of basilisks and hydras into the fight. In a moment, the camp turned into hell with screams and slaughter. The knights were trampled by the treacherous horde. The only survivor, a non-combatant aristocrat, was rescued by a guild squad sent to investigate the loss of contact, and he recounted the exhausting, terrible ordeal to the guild manager Yaduar in full detail. They mocked the arrogance of those troops, contrasting their miserable performance with the full power and undeniable superiority of the two-horned kings. He specified that it was about the 4th Imperial Guard Division, an armed force composed of the 2nd and 3rd sons of nobility, under the command of Duke Regal Camp. The Duke, father of the second queen and the Prime Minister, covered the raid with noble rhetoric about serving the country, but everyone saw it was a transparent scheme for a power struggle. Despite the political consequences and inevitable dissatisfaction within the factions, he said, the Duke would likely keep his position, shifting the blame onto others even if the disaster humiliated him for a moment. He sat at the table and listened carefully as his companion told how the scoundrels who tried to use the sacred labyrinth for their own greed met a just end, punished by the dungeon lord himself. The story continued. The beast emerged from the 10th floor, growing incredibly stronger every second, and overcoming formidable enemies and gaining previously unseen abilities, pushed further and further. He pushed deeper into the lower levels, methodically attacking and clearing the way through every boss who stood in his path. Eventually, the beast conquered Metal Dragon, claiming undisputed dominion over the 100th floor, a regime unchallenged for decades. He reasoned that the creature behaved more like a warrior than a monster, and that it had a strange restraint. It only strikes those who dare to challenge it. The conversation shifted to the dual nature of the creature. He explained that his master believed those who endured great trials were destined to prosper, just like the beast that somehow became a merchant. The city flourished precisely because of this. Merchants, craftsmen, and ambitious travelers seeking fame and fortune flocked here, leveraging the influence of the great labyrinth. He listened silently, sensing that the master's words concealed a deeper truth. True wealth was not only gold, but also the abundance that comes to those who walk the path of the labyrinth. The young traveler, still shaky after the previous skirmish, rejected the idea of drinking and insisted on celebrating their king's victories in the labyrinth. His companion quickly interrupts him, insisting that such behavior is completely unacceptable, yet he himself remains indifferent as if hinting, everything is fine. A woman intervenes, scolding them for southern laziness and demanding a return to duties. One of the men apologizes, saying he only needs a short nap. He sighs and slowly drifts into a light sleep, while his companion watches him closely, not letting go of his anxiety. The conversation shifts to the nature of the Minotaur. The elder man says that if it is a beast warrior, then it is probably waiting for a worthy opponent. The creature itself seems to confirm this. Within it smolders a silent, primal longing for the day when a hero will come and challenge it to an honorable fight. They recalled the failures of past contenders and admit, even such mighty figures as Hazel, who led elite parties, could not overcome the creature. Despite the grim history, they cling to a tiny spark of hope and ask themselves whether someone like Heavenly Sword could ever accomplish the impossible. He listened attentively as the conversation again touched on the Mercillius family, especially the young knight, whose recent exploits had become the #1 topic in the guild. A faint doubt flickered at the mention of the hero, a quiet, silent test of what really lies behind such a title. Far from the Shatter Guild, the vast estate of the Mercillius family stood imposingly in the very royal city of Ridafara. At the estate, a firm hand rested on Panji's shoulder, a restraining gesture meant to curb his noticeable agitation. The former guild leader felt tension, noticing that his resignation seemed to have turned him into an ordinary guest in this house, while at the same time he wondered why his companions were so restless. Maintaining calm authority, Julius Sama suggested to them, perhaps it was time to master the art of self-control. The heavy doors suddenly burst open, and the herald announced his arrival with a loud bass, as if the air instantly changed. He stepped before the assembly, confirming that the royal orders had indeed arrived, and drew the attention of everyone present in the hall. He received one single mercilessly frightening command, to break into the labyrinth alone and completely defeat the Minotaur Sazerdin. This very challenge arose from the unstable political atmosphere swirling around the nomination of the successor to the throne of the Kingdom of Valdemos. At first, the Imperial Council supported the first prince, but Duke Riga, the prime minister, pushed for the second, and a deep rift grew in the royal succession. The young head Mercillius Julius managed to gain considerable support among the junior nobility, challenging the traditional views of the elders who feared his influence. Tension reached its limit at the Imperial Council when the Duke made a bold, unexpected announcement. He declared that anyone capable of single-handedly defeating the monster that annihilated the 4th Imperial Guard Division has the right to bear the title of hero of the founding era. The king was clearly confused. The Duke's words weighed heavily on him. The Duke promised, if the young traveler wins against the Minotaur, he will be honored as the 25th patron knight of the kingdom 1,000 years later. He found himself at the very center of a political storm. A possible success, as Guardian Knight, would elevate the Mercillius family and block the first prince's path to the throne. But the king does not intend to delay the transfer of power, and this directly strikes at Duke Riga's interests. So the date of conquest is set for the Harvest Festival. The spectator's attention is meant to be diverted from the deadly task assigned to him. Rumors and questions begin in the corridors of power about witnesses to these proceedings, in particular, whether Everett Rovalsama is involved. Doubts arise about the very possibility of a conspiracy. As always, everyone knows he is a man of dignity and a trusted advisor to the king, so he is unlikely to get involved in Riga's family schemes. The burden of this trial becomes unbearable as soon as the harsh conditions are revealed. He is categorically forbidden from entering battle with food or healing items. And then everyone present instantly realizes, this is not just complicated wording, this is a deliberate attempt to break him, wearing him down with exhaustion and deprivation. When the tension reaches its limit, news arrives about the force already advancing. Troops with the banners of Baron Paolo and Lord Boromidal, together with the family of Duke Riga, are marching straight to the estate. She watches as political betrayal unfolds, how the Riga family intends to dismantle the cruel lineage, force renunciation, and sees that a throne is being prepared for the second prince under the guise of national duty. Because of this, her companion explains, Panzel was sent into the labyrinth under impossible conditions so that he would not return, as he remains the greatest obstacle to their ambitions. She remains steadfast in faith and firmly declares, he is her sword, and victory will inevitably come with him. The fighter nearby clenches his fist, and his gaze hardens. He admits that he had been quietly observing the situation, but the news of this recklessness finally forced him to act. He looks intently ahead with a grim, predatory smile and swears that very soon the Riga family will understand the true depth of the insult Hethi have trampled. She turns to the allies, and her voice sounds steady as she orders them to prepare for the upcoming clash. In response, the gathered troops unanimously roared their yes and were ready to move under her command. Meanwhile, far from political turmoil, in the darkness lies an enormous, silent avalanche of gold coins. She stands amid the endless waves of shimmering gold, and her armored boot presses down on the cold coins. Lowering her gaze, she feels the flow of time and realizes the one she seeks may have long forgotten about her. The surface of the bracelet, obtained 17 years ago, is a gift that allowed her to heal her mother, and later brought her face to face with the one she now serves. She firmly decides to repay an old debt. She declares her intention to fight with her own strength, and the royal soldier steps forward to take on the duty of submission. The blade is drawn from the sheath. The blade flashes briefly with a faint magical echo as the clash bursts into the air. She extends to King Elaborith the final, solemn invitation, her gaze calm, unwavering. A giant monster rises from the ruins. His heavy axe falcon is already ready as they stand face to face in the desert chamber. The air thickens with tension as the two titans focus on the strike that is about to collide. This begins their final battle. The heavy door to the 100th floor of the southern labyrinth finally yields, and behind it, the boss's chambers are revealed. A massive dark blade cuts through the darkness, its edge honed to deadly sharpness. But in response, a shining ethereal sword flashes, a blinding wave of holy light. The Minotaur stands among the ruins of fallen travelers, and his gigantic body exerts an oppressive primal force. He holds his position to the last-shining blade firmly in hand, until he finally looks the sentinel depths straight in the eyes. The beast senses that his opponent has power and how it presses, and the warrior clearly understands. Before him is the entire absolute, devastating presence of the monster. With gloomy certainty, he realizes this creature is perhaps the strongest enemy he has ever had to face. The monster's eyes narrow. A predatory anticipation awakens in him as he acknowledges that he hasn't felt such excitement for a long time. He shifted his weight. The heavy, dull thud of horse hooves echoed on the stone floor as he prepared to launch an attack. And the young traveler stood his ground, not retreating, his boots firmly rooted to the earth until the moment to act came. The beast loomed, a mountain of muscle and rage, looking down on the small adventurer, who gripped his blade with unbreakable focus. Watching closely from the side, the veteran warrior noted, the Minotaur has a clear advantage. Saying this in Russian now would be suicide, so he still wondered if the boy could find even a crack in such a desperate situation. Their gazes locked onto each other. In one pair of eyes burned primal hunger, in the other sharp calculation and intent, thought out to the smallest detail. Suddenly the ground shook. The monster lunged forward, and in a second was face to face with him at a terrifying speed. He jerked aside, barely escaping a deadly blow that shattered the stone exactly where he had stood just a moment before. The veteran gasped in shock. The boy not only spotted the movement, but flawlessly adapted to the rhythm in the beast's zone. When the monster's guard faltered for a moment, the traveler struck coldly and precisely right at that gap, forcing the giant to acknowledge his speed. He pressed the blade against the monster's weapon, feeling the Minotaur's strike press with incredible weight into every muscle fiber. From the clash of two forces, sparks flew in all directions. The contact was dull and unbearable, like thunder tearing through the silence. With a smooth motion, he turned around and barely managed to dodge the second swing. The blade sliced the air exactly where he had stood a moment ago. He looked at the creature's speed in surprise and realized the monster had caught the momentum of his own attack to turn, re-aim, and strike directly at the neck. Observers on the side gasped, stunned that the beast reacted to his movements with such terrifying precision. In anxiety, they shouted his name, their voices breaking the tension, while he focused entirely on the looming threat. He ducked under the wide axe strike. The blade whistled a few inches above his head and was already ready to strike back. The Minotaur narrowed his eyes. He recognized that the opponent had thrown everything into the fight and decided to commit to one desperate blow. He lunged forward sharply, and the blade swooped down in a desperate arc straight at the beast, who met the attack with a heavy, calloused hand. Steel clashed against the Minotaur's guard with a dull, sharp clang. Sparks flew at the point of contact, but the force of the blow threatened to shatter the traveler's resolve. A storm of sharp, brutal strikes followed. The air thickened with the clatter of metal tearing skin and biting into bone. Standing amid this chaos, he suddenly clearly understood. Here was the opponent he had been searching for all along. His senses sharpened like a blade. He felt a flash of electric heat coursing through his veins, and his body and spirit united in unshakable conviction. The monster responded with a look, a single, sharp recognition that reflected the same primal truth, and this was it. He smiles, the blade is straight in line, because he finally understands the clash is exactly what he has longed for. With a sharp jerk, he retreats, cuts the distance, and prepares for the final, decisive exchange. He lunges forward, the blade strikes the beast's defense, and a dazzling metal flash ignites instantly. The impulse carries him through a storm of blows. Every move is calculated to the smallest detail to bypass the Minotaur's defense. Without averting his gaze, he suddenly perceives the truth. All this fuss pushed him toward a single goal. He honed his strength only to put an end to this creature's life. The beast's jaws close, and a primal roar rolls through the air. It is about to retaliate. In response, he lashes with the axe, the blade strikes the blade, and sparks scatter through the dark labyrinth space. The Minotaur snaps its jaws, nearly hitting him before he sharply turns and dodges the devastating blow. A stream of heat bursts from the monster's maw. He steps back. As the spectators see, the destructive effect lasts only a moment. He stands like a wall, blade raised, and the two fighters meet eyes in the final, deaf, silent confrontation. He dashed forward, and the blade, boldly diving down, struck together, as if in a single frenzy, the very largest beast. The Minotaur looked cold and composed, gripping his weapon tightly while waiting for the moment to unleash the technique he had honed precisely for this strike. Suddenly, and at the same time smoothly, he began to rotate his own body, and around him, a vortex of uncontrollable force erupted. As if the very air was warping under the rotational power, growing into a perfect, deadly circle of energy. Year after year, the beast polished this single movement, replaying in his mind the memory of the master's technique until it became his own. He remembered the legendary fencer Percival. Once that blade traced the same beautiful, devastating arc in the duel that defined his path. The Minotaur, striving to recreate that perfection, devoted his existence to mastering the art of the circle. And he finally achieved a technique that could draw circles in every dimension, pulling opponents into a whirlwind of inevitable force. He fixed his gaze, the pupil dilated as the moment to release the strongest strike ripened inside. With a sharp jerk, he lunged forward. The blade inscribed a perfect, deadly arc in the air. The instructor gestures calm, but tension is in his voice and posture, explaining that this technique is essentially a form of rotation. He breaks down the idea step by step. Rotation provides effective acceleration, so the force can be invested directly into the blade. With a sharp movement, he demonstrates how the technique raises a whirlwind effect and how it can unleash a continuous barrage of strikes, leaving no room for survival. The student freezes, holding maximum attention, while the master makes a note. It was in this style that Lord Percival acted, and he assigned the pinnacle of fencing to this technique. He laughs sincerely, emphasizing the striking similarity between the sword and the fist despite their obvious differences. The demonstration abruptly breaks off, and the student finds himself pinned down, groaning under the pressure of the master's grip. He instantly rethinks the lesson and suddenly realizes the source of all power is in the rotation, in the strike capable of piercing the very heavens. The master concludes with words of revelation. Even Lord Percival mastered this principle and adds that such a strike cannot be blocked or avoided, even by the most experienced warriors. He understood the final lesson. The strike must be absolute, a single, solitary movement with no chance of survival. Taking a sharp breath, he tenses. His eyes widen as the weight of the technique settles into his muscles. Opposite him, the beast curled into a ball, and its bulk blurred in motion as it prepared to unleash its own primal power. He slashed with the blade, and the steel sang in the air. He declared that resistance was futile. This sword would not stop until it declared its purpose. Focusing all the power of his intent, he pressed his feet into the ground and sharply turned forward with a speed that defied his heavy armor. The blade traced a perfect, deadly arc, cutting through the space directly between them. The beast twitched and opened its eyes wide. A sudden, newly realized shock overwhelmed it as the trajectory of the strike became clear. He stubbornly completed the rotation. The circular force flared into a ring of pure, unrelenting impulse and engulfed the opponent. He abruptly gritted his teeth. The colossal pressure of the monster's furious attack, pressing on him with all its might, crushed into his very body. Suddenly and simultaneously smoothly, he spun the blade, and a flickering steel whirlwind flared around his figure. The Minotaur lunged forward, but the rotational, sweeping sword swing intercepted the strike, causing the creature to shudder from shock. He maintained the tempo. The blade traced a perfect circle in the air, irreversible, one from which there is no escape. A cold, calculated gaze fixed itself firmly on the opponent while he prepared for the next phase of the clash. An observer at the edge gawked and gasped in disbelief. He could not comprehend the power the technique unfolding before him was gaining. The observer realized with horror that the Minotaur's strike was deliberately designed so that it could neither be blocked nor evaded. However, he responded flawlessly. He followed the same arc, precisely repeating the trajectory to neutralize the threat. He understood the truth. His blade anticipated the Minotaur's strike by only a moment and forced the beast's weapon to deviate in an unpredictable path. His eyes widened in shock. For a moment he froze, suddenly realizing how easily he could be vulnerable. Their clash was not about survival, rather about a duel between two blade masters, where every move has a cost. He stood still, stunned. The technique he had honed for years was broken with the same terrifying ease. Beneath them the earth trembled, and the very space vibrated with the furious rage of the beast. It was only intensifying, wave after wave growing. A vile, wild smile stretched across the face of the Minotaur, and a new, freshly found cruel passion flared in its eyes. He weighed his next move, certain technique alone would not overcome such a formidable opponent. With a sharp breath, he prepared to close the distance. His boots rustled on the stone as his body readied for a next strike. He firmly fixed his stance and gripped the blade even tighter, restoring his resolve, while the ground beneath his feet began to tremble. His eyes narrowed, his gaze locked onto the enemy, fiery and merciless in his unbreakable focus. Opposite him, the monster revealed a torn, predatory smile, as if savoring the moment of the final clash. The monster shifted its weight, pressed its heels into the ground, and was about to unleash everything it had. It discarded all technique and skill, pouring its very essence into one single devastating blow. With a guttural roar, the creature squeezed its heavy weapon, even tighter, its fingers whitening from the strain. It raised the axe high above its head, a single target in focus, and the breathing faltered in the tense air. The observer, standing aside, realized how serious this moment was. The beast repeated the high stance of the young traveler, thereby signaling a clash of absolute power. He calculated the odds and understood. The beast truly had the advantage in speed and strength, but direct confrontation was his only path to victory. The young traveler gathered himself, sharpening his focus, as he was about to face the monster face to face. He took a low defensive stance, holding his sword at the ready, prepared to intercept the attack that was already inevitable. With a surge of determination, he activated his skills, infused strength into his muscles to sharply accelerate his movements and sharpen his strike. His eyes narrowed. There was a cold, unwavering resolve frozen there as the moment of impact approached. Opposite him, the Minotaur roared, raising his mighty axes high to deliver a devastating blow. The beast unleashed its hidden ability as a storm of raw, destructive power designed to break any defense. Their gazes locked onto each other, two titans standing on the very edge of the final, world-shattering clash. The beast lunged forward. Its gigantic form became a blurred whirlwind of pure power, while the traveler seemed to freeze, preparing for the strike. The blade held steady to meet the onslaught. They collided in a furious whirlwind of motion, their weapons drawing wide, deadly arcs in the air. He turns with calculated precision. The blade carves a perfect circle as he prepares to parry the incoming strike. The Minotaur swings his heavy axe with crushing force, hoping to shatter his opponent's defense. Steel clashes with steel, a blinding flash of light tears through the space, and the impact sends shockwaves across the nearby terrain. He immediately understands. The maneuver worked perfectly, and with grim satisfaction notes that the opponent fell right into his trap. As soon as the enemy's weapon is fixed, he presses the advantage and declares, "This very moment will be the end of his adversary." The blade cracks under colossal pressure, and he freezes in shock, realizing the terrible truth. His opponent knows how to destroy weapons. He watched in horror as his blade shattered into fragments. The metal could not withstand the devastating force of the beast strike. As soon as the weapon flew to pieces, the monster lunged forward. His gigantic figure closed the distance in a flash of deadly intent.